All right, so we're back again. We've got Craig and we've got Steve. So we're talking nuclear stuff, which is way past the top of my head, but we'll just kind of drop right back into it. Largely a discussion on molten salt reactors and thorium stuff. So anyway, I'll let you guys
Gen 4.
kind of drop into it.
It's molten style reactors, right? There's a couple different types. You got your molten salts, which is actually more chemically stable, but you get erosion problems. That'd be like your Flinac or your Flibe or something like that. And then what we were actually talking about was NAC reactors, which we tried to get going for a little while, but that's literally like liquid sodium and potassium, and that shit catches fire and air.
So molten sodium reactors, which operate hotter, obviously, but they out of necessity they have to operate hotter because you have to melt the sodium. But it's not terribly hotter. Like molten sodium reactors are reasonable enough that I think there's a way that you could make them safe. I just don't know if you'd ever make them cost effective. I think you're talking about 10-year payback time is typical for a new chemical plant. So you have to have, by the time you come out to 10 years, your maintenance recurrence has to be low enough that you're able to meet your payback time.
Well, and that's
if you're swapping out all of your parts every 10 years, if you don't meet if you don't meet $0 on your debt by the time you hit 10 years, then you're screwed because you're never going to come back out of that spiral.
Well, and there's two parts of that, right? So at the end of the day, you're assuming that all of your parts are going to work for 10 years, right? Sure. So most companies don't give you that kind of guarantee, and all it would take, right? All it takes is you get the one pump that's supposed to be operating in a 900 degree Celsius environment. Yeah, an elbow joint fails, and now you're spraying, molten fuel that catches fire in air. That you need, all kinds of.
Well, like I was just saying too, imagine how you're going to handle this. Well, the first thing you do if you're trying to handle this is as an emergency alert, you inert the area to make it safe. And we just discussed, like, from the actuarial perspective there, basically you're going to be shelling out what is like $200,000 per employee that you just killed.
Well, I mean,
just cutting the fire out.
I used to turn around and I used to say, hey, yeah, if we're going to inert the space, right, we can handle that. We have SCBAs, we have that kind of
to wear an SCBA in the area, and that just makes it even worse because now you have to have everybody trained on SCBAs.
Right.
They also have to be trained to get them on within 3 lungfuls of atmosphere.
Well, I mean, these kinds of things, when you do that kind of stuff, those kinds of compartments where that kind of accident could happen aren't going to be occupied, right? Like, yeah, those are going to be sealed spaces. Let's be honest about that.
Well, yeah, and like I brought up the LHC not that long ago, in the same way that whenever they're running that thing, nobody's actually down there inspecting the pipes because there's this huge radiation cloud that follows the active cloud, the active packets of protons around.
Exactly, and it's going to be at least as bad if you start talking about molten fuel. The problem when you start talking about the higher atomic number elements is that they aren't that radioactive as long as they're behind anything, right? Because they're almost all emitting pure alpha, right? They've got some low energy X-rays, some low energy gammas every once in a while, but usually if we're talking about an actual, like, we want to get neutron sources, we want to get gamma sources or something like that, we have to combine them with something else so that when the alpha particle hits, it emits this crazy thing and you get these super high energy shit, right?
They get those higher than thermal neutrons, things like that.
Well, thermal, yeah. So you'll do like your beryllium plus your americium beryllium or something like that, or you'll do a lithium. What is it? Plutonium lithium or something like that. There's a specific one I used to do. Americium lithium. Americium beryllium, Californium beryllium. These kinds of sources, they'll do like neutrons and they'll do high energy gammas, and they're really they are truly scary shit when you deal with them because the amount of energy, most of their energy is being emitted by an alpha particle, and then that decays with the beryllium atom into something else, which puts out a lot of crazy stuff.
I mean, or you can just go straight to a cobalt 60 source and kill everything, right?
Well, no, cobalt 60 is actually not that bad. It's really not that scary. You'll get a lot of dose.
The P30 or whatever, you just have fun lacing your entire body with radioactive phosphorus.
Yeah, well, Pu-238 scarier shit, man. Let me tell you.
Well, yeah, that also disrupts everything else in your body.
Well, it actually doesn't. It just bonds. It basically all of it ends up in your marrow.
Oh,
right?
Jesus.
So it's like guaranteed leukemia.
That's what I mean. It fucks you over pretty hard.
Yeah, it's like guaranteed leukemia. So you start talking about fuels, right? You start talking about fuels, and most of our shit's going to be like thorium or uranium, which isn't terrible for you, right? It's not great, but it's not terrible.
You have the uranium decay cascade, and then you have like all the nest that comes with that too. You have to clean out.
Yeah, but that's actually not so bad until you initiate fission, right? As soon as the uranium starts absorbing a bunch of neutrons, it upgrades itself into the transuranics, and the transuranics are fucking scary. Like I'm not you got transuranics all over your household, right? Like every single smoke detector is americium 241. Right, you guys, everybody out there, you have the most nastiest of nuclear particles, and it is keeping you safe from a fire.
Yeah,
with that stuff, like, and there's like microcuries in there. There's a lot of like you don't want to lick that. But
the thing is, it's contained within this really, really well housed thing.
Exactly.
You have to work hard to crack that thing open to get like the microgram that's in there.
Right. But then you start talking about doing a full plant, right? They're going to have gallons and gallons of this shit. And it's going to be encased in either something that is incredibly caustic, like a fluoride salt, or incredibly flammable, like sodium potassium. So, yeah, okay, you can inert it in sodium potassium, and that sounds really great. Like, that's better than the caustic. I guess that's probably worse than the causticness.
Well, so here's the thing. So if you have a fluoride salt, the fluoride salt's not so bad, but whenever it can get a chance to create free fluorine, which it doesn't take much to do.
No, and there's enough energy there that it will be.
Yeah, so the free fluorine is the major hazard out of that. And the funniest thing is, like, if you ever look at how they store this shit, the fluorine, that is, the way you store it is you get a fresh, solid nickel tank, and you have to fill it the first time in an ice bath because the fluorine will plate the inside of the tank with nickel fluoride.
Mm.
So it reacts with the inside and creates it's kind of like using phosphorus inside of an iron pipe, or phosphate in an iron pipe. It'll coat the inside with iron phosphate, and then it doesn't peel apart like rust normally does, like iron oxide doesn't flake off. Yeah. So you do the same thing with nickel fluoride on the inside of the nickel tank in order to store fluorine as a liquid inside the tank. Which, by the way, if fluorine as a gas is scary enough, fluorine as a liquid is fucking scary.
Yeah, that's the thing, that you use the wrong pair of gloves with it. It'll just your whole your finger calcifies, and it continues to calcify the rest of your body.
If you get fluorine on you, hydrogen fluoride, by the way, is effectively what will be entering your system at that point. And if you know anything about that, it takes hardly any of it to kill you, because the other thing is you don't feel it because it immediately dead ends your nerves by binding to all the calcium. So you no longer get nerve conduction to tell you that pain is happening.
Yeah.
So you might get a flash of pain at the beginning, and then you don't feel anything anymore, which is, I guess, great in retrospect if, like, you're worried about feeling awful as you die. But but the other thing is, because it's able to suck up calcium like that, like it causes a cascade of horrible in your system.
Yes,
so
yes, it does.
Fluorine gas catches everything on fire. It's actually just about as bad as sodium.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, let me rephrase that. It's like sodium as a gas. It's that bad.
But that's kind of the thing, is you start talking about these Gen 4 reactors, right? And if you dive into it, right, there's Mark Schneider, and he's out there, oh, look, we should go nuclear, which, I'm a nuclear proponent as well, obviously. Right. But he's sitting there, and he's all Gen 4, Gen 4, Gen 4, which it's easy to get to that standpoint until you actually have to, like, break down the nitty-gritty of the chemistry and the radcon side.
Well, here's the other side of it.
There's no way to keep your workers safe if shit goes wrong. So under the assumption that plant operates 100% perfectly and in spec for however long you're going to have that plant there, and there are no problems whatsoever, it's a wonderful idea. Beyond that, it's terrible. And when you actually break down the cost, it's not a huge savings in comparison to our traditional fission reactors. And you just don't get the safety factor that our traditional fission reactors have. Those things last for we could have our nuclear plants today, the ones that are old and ancient in 30 years. We could have those last hundreds of years if we really wanted them to, because they're designed well.
Sure. So when you talk about Gen 4, like there's other things besides a lifter reactor or a molten sodium reactor or even a TAC reactor. Like there's other Gen 4s, and like couldn't you? I think we talked about this before. Can't you just run thorium inside of a uranium-based reactor? Like similarly,
they do now. They do now, right? Okay. Like, so that's the thing is you don't need to go for a Gen 4 to run this stuff. We routinely use this as a fuel mixture in our reactors, and it's been in our reactors since the 1990s. The difficulty that you have when you start talking about our traditional light water reactors is you have a ton of neutron absorbance in there, right? So what ends up happening is the thorium, right? So thorium-232, in order for it to fission, it doesn't fission with a neutron. Like uranium-235, I fire a neutron at it, it absorbs the neutron and breaks into a whole bunch of different tasty compounds. Right, and you get like 2.5 out. Thorium, on the other hand, sits there and absorbs the neutron, and then it has to absorb a second neutron. No, it's not yes, it is, but it's not really. Like you breed thorium. So thorium is what would be known as a breeder reactor. It absorbs the neutron. It converts from thorium-232 to uranium-233.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so then uranium-233, if you that is a fissile fuel, right? You send another neutron at. Yeah, it is. It's just as good as 235. You send another neutron at it, and it splits off with 2 some odd neutrons into the rest of the reactor. Now you say, well, that sounds really great. I spend 2 neutrons, and I gain 2 neutrons, and that's kind of shitty because all of a sudden it's not self-sustaining. It's a little bit more than that, but it's not a lot more than that. So in order to get a self-sustaining thorium reaction, you need to have, not just a bunch of thorium, but you need to not have a whole bunch of stuff absorbing the neutrons. And when you start talking about water works as a moderator. The hydrogens will pick up the neutrons. The oxygen will pick up some of the neutrons. You'll have your steel cladding, and that's going to be where you're going to get your nickel 59, which will turn into cobalt 60 once it absorbs some neutrons, and so you get your cobalt 60 off of that. So you have all of these other things in a reactor which are sucking up the neutrons that the thorium needs to be a self-sustaining fission reaction. And that's kind of the problem that you run into with the light water designs, is you can't use some of the other fertile fuels that we have, like thorium, which is incredibly abundant and incredibly safe. I mean, 14 billion year half-life. But at the same time, you can do that by juicing it a little bit with some extra uranium-235, right? Or you could sit there and use uranium-238, which is also incredibly abundant. But you have to run it at the fast spectrum instead of the thermal spectrum. And fast spectrum is a little bit more touchy in order to get it to go. But you can run that as a light water reactor as well, right? So that's kind of the thing as you start talking about reactor tech.
Well, given the abundance of 238, like why haven't because it's way more. What is it? Only like a couple percent is not 238. So why don't we?
It's not even a couple percent. It's like 99.98% or something like that, or 98.9% or 99.8%.
Right. Like it's a pitiful fraction that's the fissile stuff we use, and I know we largely operate on it because it was part of the war effort. But now we're on the other side of that century, so to speak. Here, like why bother not using the fast spectrum at that point? Like we have so much more.
Fast spectrum is a lot harder, right? So when we start talking about neutrons, right, everything starts to operate in terms of energy spectra, right?
Yeah.
Mass energy conversion, E equals MC squared, all that fun stuff.
Probably specify what thermal and fast mean.
So thermal neutrons are essentially slow neutrons, right? So each neutron has whatever mass it has, right? It's basically an atomic mass unit kind of thing. That would be its rest mass, would be your 1 AMU. And then it's got a kinetic component, depending on how fast it's traveling, right? So you have these thermal neutrons, which is a specific range. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but within that range, it is very easy to hit an atom and a nucleus because you're coming in, your neutron's coming in, it gets into the nuclear field, it gets absorbed by the nucleus, and that's your kind of thing. You start moving into the fast field, right? And these things are zipping around. All of this stuff is all relativistic. So we're talking about like extremely fast versus ludicrous speed, right? And then they've gone to plaid, right? For Spaceballs folks out there, right? So fast is they've gone to plaid spectrum of nuclear reactions. And the problem that you have there is it actually changes from, because it's zipping around so fast, it's not really like the nucleus isn't really able to catch it. So your actual collisions, your target size is much smaller, which means that
area for the collisions is smaller.
Right. So you get a lot more scatter, which is its own separate problem, and then you don't get quite as many like captures and fission. You could run it, but it usually requires getting into like a sodium reactor in order to run it appropriately.
I'm guessing it just in general has to be a bigger reactor in order to guarantee a higher likelihood of catching these neutrons.
That would be that's kind of one of the things that you run into with like a lot of the molten salt stuff or the thorium reactors is you really just need to have it be mostly thorium.
Either, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, it's not so complicated in the technical sense as it is in the practical sense.
Right.
Like you've got to imagine this: if your reactor, for like say an LWR, has to be if your reactor's if the building that contains it is 1,000 times bigger because of that 1 to 1,000 ratio we talked about before, just in case it creates steam from all the water inside the system. If it has to be that size already, then if you double the size of the reactor to catch more of these neutrons, doubling something that is 1,000 times bigger that houses everything is
you get like 4 times the size.
Is much more of a pain in the ass from the budgetary perspective here. It is so much more costly to do
logistics.
That. Right.
Well, like, that's one of the things. I think that one of the problems that I have with the way our nuclear regs are structured is there's 1,000 different ways we could handle a catastrophic error, right? Like the reactor has failed. Oh no, we have a shit show. Well, right now we build a giant pressure dome. That's how we handle it. We build basically a pressure cooker and hope it doesn't turn into a bomb. It's a really bad strategy, right? Like, that's a really bad strategy.
I mean, that's one way of putting it, yeah.
Right. So that's what we've tried to do. And it works, honestly, it works really well. You look at, like, Fukushima. Like, Fukushima is amazing. They get hit with, like, a magnitude 9 earthquake, a massive tidal wave that straight up murders 30,000 people, and then the Fukushima plant just sits there for 4 days before anything happens, and then they get a minor steam leak, right? There are more people who died in the evacuation of Fukushima out of fear of radiation than there are people who will die over their lifetime of cancer. Namely, nobody will die over their lifetime of cancer based on the initial results that we've gotten and the follow-on stuff. But about 50 people died just because we evacuated the area in sheer panic, right? So you start talking about these things. It's not a terrible strategy, but it's also like we could do these kinds of things where we do things like rupture seals, right? So if we were, I worked at Plymouth Pilgrim and Seabrook Station, I would be perfectly happy as an individual if I had, instead of this giant pressure structure, I had a moderate pressure structure that wasn't necessarily capable of surviving missile strikes like the current design wrecks by the NRC, right? I'd be okay taking the risk of not getting hit by a missile. And in exchange, instead of doing this containment thing that's designed to hold all of the stuff and just cook off for days and days and days, if we just vented it. Right, you run that through a double or triple HEPA filtration. You send it out to the ocean. You have the ocean come in and flood the reactor wall, and all of a sudden you're going to be fine. You're going to have steam. You're going to have time.
You say this like the steam coming through isn't just going to melt that plastic.
Well, that's again right. So we're talking about in order for a Gen 2 reactor to fail, right? In order for us to have a problem, the reactor has to not be shut down, right? And then all of the operational controls of the equipment have to be locked out. and then all of the physical mechanical structure has to be you have to be physically incapable of getting to the reactor, and all of your coolant has to stop flowing all of a
So
sudden.
you need a pretty monumental
Which means-
cascade failure there.
Yes.
Right, you're talking like in order for this to happen, it really has to be magnitude level 9 earthquake plus gigantic tsunami that wipes out your entire population, in the nearby surrounding area. Like, it is act of God stuff to get a nuclear reactor to the point where we have critical issues, right?
I mean, and even then, you more or less still have a scram button to press.
Yes, you still do, right? Like, you if the aliens attacked and they dropped a gigantic, thermonuclear bomb right above the nuclear plant, the power will shut out and you still have 4 to 5 days to solve the problem, right? Like, all you have to do is get those pumps back on in 4 to 5 days. And the reason that Fukushima failed is because they made an executive decision at the plant to allow the government to go solve the problem that they were having with the 30,000 people dead rather than the nuclear problem. They figured that the containment structure would hold and it wouldn't be a problem, which they were right? Like, they probably made the right decision.
Part,
right. So they probably made the right decision. The downside is all of a sudden the news story got to talk about the radiation flare.
I was going to say, they had that minor leak and that was basically it.
Right. That was it. So if we change the
3 Mile
structure
Island
up,
all over again, and even then, 3 Mile Island didn't leak any radiation.
The highest dose people could have gotten is a chest X-ray, right? It's like nothing. It's inconsequential in your life.
That's what I mean. Like, it basically didn't let anything out,
Right.
and we ended up shutting down nuclear operations in the U.S. for
30 years. 30 years. Yeah, but 3 Mile Island also came on top of Chernobyl and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Well, yeah,
right?
there was that problem where they decided to mediate a fucking nuclear reactor with graphite.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Of all things, let's put some pencil lead in there and fuck it up.
Let's all enjoy what socialism has brought to the world.
Okay, just to make clear why this is such a bad idea. Break down why graphite should never be in such a position.
most control rods are built out of boron or beryllium or something like that, and that's because it does a very good job of absorbing neutrons. And once it absorbs the neutrons, it doesn't convert into something that suddenly spits more neutrons out, or gamma, or alpha. So it basically kills the reaction, and that's what your control rod is supposed to do.
AKA
now, if
control.
you put in, it controls, right? So it kills the reaction. That's what it does. It says, no more neutrons for you. It is the soup Nazi of the nuclear reactor world.
There
right?
you go.
That's what it is.
Nitromethane.
Excellent reference, by the way.
engine.
Now, right. So you put graphite on there, and graphite says, hey, that's a fast neutron. I'm going to turn it into a thermal neutron. And like we talked about earlier, if you convert a fast neutron to a thermal neutron, that increases your amount of fission. So if you have graphite tips going into your reactor, you're basically creating a power spike every time you're trying to shut the reactor off.
Now, here's the other side of that. Graphite is flammable.
Oh, that's a separate problem.
Okay, yeah.
So if oxygen gets to your reactor after it's started to melt down, it catches on fire and sprays out radioactive smoke, which is why the entire fucking area around Chernobyl is hot.
Well, that's also because of how they handled their waste. They just kind of sprinkled the reactor remains along the hillside.
Like, between these two different things here, like, the whole area is going to be hot for another 10,000 years. Which,
oddly enough, though, right? And I have to point this out that
Sure.
there were people who preferred to live in a radioactive wasteland than under Soviet communist rule.
True.
It was actually easier to go out there.
Hey, man,
there was
you
no
and the big
power,
worm.
and there was no power, and there was no sewage, and there were no public services whatsoever than to tolerate Soviet Russia.
But there was also
Look,
no
more power
Comrade
to 'em.
Stalin.
If they can hang out with the radioactive wolves and the giant ass worms, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get your stalk on. It works.
Probably great fish bait, Like, you get
Oh, yeah.
couple of fish, get like 2 or 3 fish out of one worm.
Well, that's
Pretty
kind of
cool.
the thing, right? Like you start talking about the cleanup there, and that's a whole shit show. They could have actually probably kept that city up and operational.
They could have done a little bit better about it. But like the way that the smoke fell out, like that plume was just not going to do anything good. Like even if it wasn't deadly as a radiation source, like just the damage done by PR was insurmountable.
Yeah, and I mean, you start talking about it. It's actually not terribly large. It's only like a 30-kilometer zone.
You say that, and that's large.
It's not, though. It's in the real, like, consider the amount of space that it would take to consider the amount of space that it would take to replace that nuclear reactor with solar panels, and all of a sudden it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, but like that's cherry picking, all right?
I don't think that's cherry picking.
That's cherry picking, all right?
That's apples to apples. If I vaporize one landmass for a short period of time, it's better than vaporizing a larger landmass for a long period of time.
I would call it more cylindra picking, but if we're getting verbiage here.
Oh god, that was such a terrible idea. Obama, you fucking moron! Why would you do that?
Listen, there were solar panels in the round, right?
Sure.
It's the Martin Artist's equivalent of how to do technology.
It's the Marvin Martian version of it, isn't it?
Oh my god!
Let me see your dollars. I disintegrator are able to take care of those.
Well, I mean, that's how almost all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I've actually got that as a Anyway, continue. I've got a great segue we can go to from here that I haven't told you guys I got.
I was just saying that in terms of like safety features, if we skipped out on doing the Gen 4 stuff, we could actually turn around and make a modern nuclear plant for a fraction of the cost if we just turned around and invented our steam buildup. Like, again, all of this is critical failure. So we're building all these structures in the event that something that is the safest form of power generation that we have ever built as a society.
As a species, I think is
as a species. I was going for that too, but
I think it's safe to say that as a species, nothing has been safer.
I would say that, but we have other kin, so let's go for a society.
Well, let's just go back to the original power source, fire, and then look over at the western coast right now. Maybe it's not doing so well for the safety.
Hey, record. You know what? If those guys were thinking smart, they would put up a turbine and they would just. They would just enjoy the wind.
Maybe, they'd have some great opportunities for some Stirling generators out there. They've got a lot of hot and cold areas.
Yeah. Oh my god, dude! So I don't know if I showed you that before, but I think I threw some random pictures up on Twitter. I had one of those little coffee cups, Stirling generators. I put it on top of my hot air popcorn maker. And that thing lasted through like 5 or 6 cycles before the little HDPE disc inside just fused to the glass. It fucking died.
Oh man, that's funny.
I can believe that.
I heard it slowing down and I saw it stop, but the air was still on. And I was very confused.
Overworked and underpaid. So, let me run this cool segue I got for you. I'm going to drop it in the chat here. Slack at DOE's National Accelerator Lab has a brand new mini particle accelerator.
Holy shit, that's awesome.
It is. And
so those are radio cavities in that picture for the people who might look at the link later on, I guess under the video or the podcast link.
Yeah.
Those little bulges that you see are radio resonator cavities. So that's basically how you get the particle to come in one side, and then when the frequency, when on the other side of the wave, it pushes the other way, and then it ejects it on the other side of the cavity.
And
so you can think of it like the wave kind of sloshes back and forth on the inside, and in one polarity it has an electric field that will yank the particle in, and on the other polarity it'll push the particle out the other side.
But what this is, to put it into a purely practical and generally cool kind of thing, this could make the Large Hadron Collider 10 times smaller and just as effective as it is today.
Maybe. So
or at least the emitter portions.
The particle, the packet density that they have to deal with is so extreme that so we were actually just talking about this before, I think before we came on, about the nobody being inside the tunnels around the LHC when the thing's up and running, and there's a reason for that. All those protons flying around near the speed of light, inside that space around the pipe that you usually see the workers like walking around in the pictures, there is a halo of high energy radiation that travels along with this. And we're not talking about just like alpha or beta or gamma particles, like other exotic particles kind of coming out of the ether here.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's
because,
all kinds
because
of
if you haven't gotten hit by your fair share of Higgs bosons, you
Right.
have not done it right.
God, that's so wrong in so many ways.
Listen, I want to have my mass field increased.
Well, I mean
Lose weight.
that's certainly one way to try and get the gains.
So, yeah. No pump like the LHC tunnels.
Oh yeah, you will be wide.
Well, you'll be
Listen.
ripped in more than one way.
All I have to say is I'm not fat. I'm big particled.
There you go. Beautiful. So there's this halo of radiation that follows along, and so it's not just that you also have this repulsion between the protons, as you might imagine. Certainly, you could miniaturize the experimental apparatus, but the kind of, so you need all those protons because the flux of protons coming in is really what makes this experiment work. A lot of the stuff that they rely upon, that they do rather, is contingent upon having like 200,000 protons in each packet, and they inject thousands of packets per generation cycle.
Well, yeah, I mean this
So
is a
you have-
scientific
you have-
instrument, so it's necessarily as precise
Now-
as possible.
Mind you that a mole is 10 to the 26 on the order of 10 to the 26 particles. So when we're talking on the order of 10 to the 5th particles here that are flying around inside this thing in a packet, and then maybe you have 1,000 packets in the loop at a time. So you could say, all right, there's about on the order of 1 million, so 10 to the 6th plus particles in there at a time. It's not that many protons in the grand scheme of things, but if you're talking about having 200,000 of them close together, so that you have a high flux for when they collide to create all these different interactions, which is where they actually get, that's the main advantage of this thing, is it has so many interactions that happen at once that you can actually pick out from the statistics these weird bumps, and even those take months to generate. So when you talk about miniaturizing to this scale, that's where I see a problem coming in. I don't think you're going to get the same flux out of it. You're not going to be able to get 200,000 protons near each other, like near enough to be able to get through this thing without wanting to fly apart.
Now where you would get some advantages is in some of the proposed designs for fusion.
Sure,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
So and there's a lot of progress that's been made. So one of the biggest problems is
Inertial reactors.
Inertial reactors? Yes.
Well, before we
Yeah,
dip into that, there's also column C, guns. I mean, you've just miniaturized a particle beam cannon.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised. I don't think charged particle weapons is going to be a real big thing.
Well, I mean, they're incredibly energy dependent, we'll say. And, all that. But, batteries, if they get good enough or generation gets small enough, it's reasonable,
You know what? I don't think we have to worry about batteries ever getting down that size. The Elon Musk thing was actually kind of both disappointing and satisfying to me.
You expected him to come out with the next generation of diamond batteries or something?
No. I mean, ultimately, right? As I've said, I have a completely rational hatred of degenerable energy technologies like wind and solar, right? And that actually extends possibly to an irrational level to adjacent
All right,
technologies.
can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I got cut off there. I was trying to put some of this into perspective here.
Oh.
I could hear you guys for a little bit, and I guess you couldn't hear me.
Nope, not at all.
No, sir.
So let's put this. My internet cut out and came back just now.
Oh, okay. Well, I said guns, and I didn't hear a word from you after.
That was where I had an issue, immediately. So the LHC, to put it in perspective, people always ask the question, what happens if you put your hand in the beam? And ignoring things like the halo of radiation and all the other jazz. Imagine just for a moment you could actually do that safely somehow. It would punch a hole right through your hand, because each proton basically has the equivalent of a cruise liner going 10 miles an hour behind it. It has a shit ton of energy behind it, but it will not make your body fly back like, say, a hollow point bullet would. The reason why is it's not going to have any fucking resistance going through your hand. It'll punch a small, micron-sized hole and probably give you cancer and kill you. It is a very precise beam. So something like this, if you're talking about doing this like doing manufacturing in a vacuum, then absolutely, this actually could be really useful for doing PCBs or doing silicon design. It's like if you're making wafers, because the way they make a wafer right now, we've gotten so precise that the way they actually, I think I even told you this before.
Yeah, they're blasting away layers.
Yeah, the way they do that is by having a precise energy to the particles they fire into the wafer, into the slug, and then it pops a wafer off just by change in specific volume. So you could do something like that, but imagine you could do that with
technology. Is that?
So they fire a particle beam.
No. I mean, which size scale technology is that?
That's wafer size. That's 12 inches wide to 3 feet wide.
Okay, so you're not talking about the actual photoresist stuff and.
No. This comes before that, when they make the actual wafer. They fire a beam at this thing and they pop a wafer off the front of it just by specific volume change, by having them embed at a specific depth due to the energy of the radiation that's being fired at the thing.
Well, so, I mean, that's kind of normal for they're actually doing that for medical stuff too now.
Yeah, but this wasn't a thing 20 years ago or 30 years ago. This is relatively new. But we've gotten so precise with that's how we make wafers for making CPUs and shit.
And that's actually you start digging into it when you start talking proton beams. Yeah. Proton beams is legitimately how they're starting to look at radiation for cancer therapy.
Yeah, they've been doing it for cancer therapy now for a while now, and they also do that with so they've managed to take proton beams to do that. So this could be used actually in the silicon area. If you miniaturize the concepts of popping off a little disc of silicon, think about it like this: if you want to ablate an area to create a hole, instead of having the whole disc popped off the front of a slug, if you say you already had the wafer, you could pop a little tiny plate out of an area. If you're doing if you want to do CVD, so chemical vapor deposition. So if you want to do if you want to pull off a piece instead of doing the entire thing additive style. So right now they use CVD to put silicon and dopants, all that stuff on. They put a photoresist on, which gives you the pattern. They add stuff to it with CVD, and then or with doping they'll fire individual atoms at the thing. So they'll do a kind of a sputtering almost. But then they'll get rid of the resist and they'll put the next layer on. But imagine if you could take things out as well as put things on. So they're basically stuck effectively, and this is a really bad analogy, but it's the same principle. They're stuck coming up with a base wafer and then 3D printing stuff onto it. They can't remove anything at that point. All they can do is tell something where to put more stuff on. So imagine if they could use, say, something like this little this miniaturization to then break stuff off again. You could do actual subtractive manufacturing at the nanoscale, potentially, if you had vision.
There's a lot of problems that they have with the nanoscale stuff, even as they're doing it now, right? Nanoscale manufacturing is you start talking about running into probability equations, which really just kind of screw your equipment, right?
So that's why CVD is such a really cool thing. CVD if you're making 1,000 or 1,000,000 chips at once, it's really great because all you have to do is use a photoresist and put each layer on. But if you could pop stuff back off again, and like you know they have different ways of washing stuff off. If that was ever effective at removing debris that you've ablated from the surface using some kind of particle accelerator, especially if it's miniaturized down to the size of a robot arm, which is perfectly acceptable inside one of these manufacturing instruments. Like if you can get something down to like the size of like a standard desktop computer, that's the scale size of instrumentation that they'll put inside these devices. They're just really well stabilized and very well positioned. But like if you're talking about firing things with the beam accuracy here, like they can do this in a vacuum. CVD is basically done in a vacuum, so they can do something. If it's something on that scale, it's already got a lot of tech built in to the whole design of these things already. And then for the medical side of things, like
that could make the
huge,
much smaller.
Yeah, like right now, a proton beam therapies are room scale. Necessarily, and they can direct things down to a point and so on, but like they do what's called
what we're looking at here to put it into a real quick perspective is we're looking at taking the earliest computers that were just that room sized and looking at with this making it into a modern desktop,
or like say the LHC, which is city scale, and maybe putting it into someone's backyard.
Well, I don't know if you'd be able to scale down that much.
I don't think so.
Well, maybe the control center, say.
You're probably looking at like again going back to the fusion example.
Sure.
So the tokamaks used to be building size, and now with a lot of the manufacturing changes that are available for the electromagnets, they're able to scale those down to be like garage size. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's a big garage, but yeah, basically.
Yeah, and I suspect that's probably what we'd be looking at here, because you'd have to be, by the time you start factoring your shielding and your rad protection and all of the other stuff, I don't think you'll get that small.
Yeah, backyard's ambitious. I'll give you that. But maybe like a small neighborhood though. Like I think that's not so unreasonable. But
every neighborhood needs their local particle accelerator.
Just because everybody that you don't like is cancer, and so you can go send them the treatment. They can go in for their free lobotomy, until someone points the finger at you, in which case cancer is no longer a problem.
Cancer. Beautiful, beautiful cancer.
Be with us forever, won't it? In one way or another.
No, I suspect that we are getting closer and closer to...
That's why I say one form or another. I kind of think we might be dealing with I think the cancerous cells that exist within the human body may soon be an issue of the past.
A lot of them, I think, are probably going to be
cancerous cells that exist in society. Well, we'll do what we can.
I expect those will be extirpated post haste.
Very good vocab word there. I like the fenestrate too.
Yeah,
we don't have enough windows in the world.
I get the distinct impression that it turns out that they're not doing so well. At least the most recent polling suggests that.
Oh God, that is just going to be such a fun night. I can't wait to watch the Young Turks have another meltdown.
My God, man!
I think everyone in the world can actually agree with that. From the left to the right.
I don't care who wins. They're going to be upset. And it's going to be hilarious to watch.
Oh yeah, no, that's a given.
Like if you're having a bad night and like your candidate's not doing well, just go watch the Young Turks be upset at everybody.
I will say
indeed.
that I made a terrible mistake last election night, because even though I kind of was hoping for a Trump win, at the end of the day, I didn't think it was going to happen. So I agreed to a bet with my buddy that I would drink a beer every time he won a state. That ended up being...
Oh, you fool.
Oh, dear.
Turns out that there is a limit, at which point I just walked into the bathroom and didn't come out for the rest of the night.
Oh, just like Hillary. Anyway.
Oh, damn.
Oh my god.
Oh, goodness.
Poor Kill Dog.
Oh,
Poor
November 3rd is going to be a show.
Oh,
it's going
man.
to be a show.
And I will be voting in person.
I will be there
especially
in a
after I
level
saw
3
today.
hazmat suit if I have to. Whatever it takes.
Well, you know what?
I'll be in a bunny suit if I have to.
They're pushing back, right? Like all of a sudden, the Dems had a reversal of their opinion in the mail-in voting thing, which means
Well, actually, I was going to say there's that, and take it with a grain of salt because it is Project Veritas, seriously. But at the same time, just the video that I did see from this, I'll just throw this in the chat. Like,
oh my
yeah,
god!
this has
I
just
saw
dropped.
this was,
Actually, today.
this dropped tonight. Yeah. So the Somalis in Minneapolis are having a great time, with their buddies coming by and going, "Hey, if you got your ballots yet, give them to us." I think ballot harvesting should just flat out be fucking illegal.
Like, well, I mean,
there's no excuse anymore.
Clearly, some kind of electioneering, if not outright election.
You can bring in, how about this? You can bring in the ballots for everybody inside your household. After that, fuck you. I can't anymore. No.
I actually don't know if I'd even go that far.
Honestly, I'm kind of saying that. I think it's a sanctioned process.
At the end of the day, Fauci and Birx have both said that voting in person is perfectly safe. And at the end, if you can go to Walmart and you can get your shit out of Walmart, you can stand in line to cast your ballot.
And if you can't stand in line to cast a ballot, you can also go and vote early. You can go in when your local courthouse opens. Right? Put on your mask.
I'm
not
planning on voting on election day if I can help it. I'm planning on going early.
Take a shower in bleach, whatever you need to do, and then walk in the place. Hold your breath. Press the buttons.
Here's the thing. Florida's just did their phase 3 reopening, I guess, this weekend. And that doesn't mean you have to go out there and lick someone else's snot off their face.
Yeah, right. Just because the bars are open doesn't mean you should be licking door handles.
So you guys know that I'm in New York, right? I'm in upstate New York. So
how could I forget, New Yorker?
Yes, I know because we're the best.
I look forward to your lockdown being lifted in 2022.
I know that's exactly. I told you.
It'll be 2025 because
there's a reason I was opposed to all the COVID shit, and it is this because I am ruled by Cuomo.
Yeah, no. You see, here's the funny thing. I bet you that your guys aren't going to be out of the quote COVID hot waters until 2025.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure we won't.
And then
it's getting annoying, right?
Watch Trump be appointed VP 2 years into someone else's term and get a full 10 years out of this too.
I would laugh so hard.
And then Nancy Pelosi is going to be sitting there, a bitter lump on a chair, wondering what happened.
I live in upstate New York, which obviously everything outside of Long Island is considered upstate New York. So that's an awful lot of territory, right?
Right.
When we start talking COVID,
you said it wrong. It's Long Island.
I don't say it wrong. We can blow the bridges. They can be their own fucking state. So I live up in an area where I think my county has 300,000 people, and I actually get an apology letter. So New York is not all blue. It really isn't.
Right. It's a little tiny area that has a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, it really is. The rest of the state is blood red. And it's so funny. The Democrats try so hard, and we laugh at them. But where I'm at, right? We have 300,000 people in our county, and I think the max that I ever saw through the whole entire COVID thing as active cases was 300. So 1 in 1,000 people at peak was what I had to deal with, and we still had to put on, because Cuomo is amazing. We still had to put on masks and be locked in and have our shit shut.
Like I said, just because things are open, here's the thing: when you cross the street, you either look both ways or you're a Darwin Award waiting to happen. Mm-hmm. You don't need a fucking law for that. From the very beginning, that was one of the things that pissed me off. Just from the start, from the get go. Not only did they come up with this draconian shit because they could, they then were hypocritical pieces of shit about it. So that later on, when their dumbass policies failed and they needed to do a lockdown, they don't have any credibility left to do it.
Right.
Now people are just going to say, well, you're just going to do this to only the Republican areas, and then go to your fucking beach house or whatever the fuck it is. Like,
No shit.
Hey,
Whitmer
you
up
should
in,
come down to
in
Chinatown and have some food.
Michigan.
You know, that would be the thing
Yeah,
to do.
there's that too. All those fuckers that those pieces of shit, like that New York City health whatever
Well, the sad part is that you go around, right? I remember standing in line behind. I was outside of all of our businesses here to even be open. Had to go through all kinds of hoops. So I was standing outside of my local Ocean State Job Lot. For you guys, you probably don't know what that is. That is the best stuff straight from China. It's China Shop 101. That's really what it is. It's like the Amazon's China section.
Oh, so it's a Wish
Everything
physical store.
there is nothing that is a name brand in that store. If it's made on or as seen on TV, you're lucky. It's like the off-brand of as seen on TV, which
Right.
I didn't even think was possible until I started
it's
shopping.
like
there.
getting a monoprice 3D printer then.
You know what? I wish they don't have anything that cool. It's like your day-to-day shit of USB cables where you get it's a hell of a deal, right? I buy 3 of them for the same price as one, but 2 of them work. So,
I mean, hey, you're still getting out ahead, right?
Yeah, I am.
Hey, 2
I am
steps
getting
forward,
out
1
ahead.
step back is still a step forward.
That's true. That's true. But so I was standing in line behind some guy, and he was actually he worked at, of all jobs, he was an incinerator tech, right?
Oh,
so the guy burns his dead bodies, and we're sitting there in like the middle of COVID with our masks on, and they're counting the number of people that are allowed into the store, and sitting there and having guards outside of a friggin' store here. And he turned around and he's dealing with a county. Of the 400 bodies that he'd burned the previous week, right, 7 of them were COVID. And that's 7 of them were COVID with all of the asterisks associated with the bonus money that the hospitals get for declaring somebody
COVID.
Right. Like it's COVID in quotation marks.
Okay, so there may have been a car wreck here and there.
There may have been a car wreck here or there, or a motorcycle accident, or just.
Well,
there was probably COVID on that bullet anyway.
To put some pushback on that, like a lot of this is also being kind of undercounted.
Well, yeah,
and I'm not saying that these things.
We actually did go over this too.
I'm not saying these things cancel each other out, but like if you look at the excess deaths, like we're way past sitting there going, all right, conspiracy theory time. Some of the people. So I've looked at a lot of them that worked should have.
Oh shit, we lost you for a second there.
I agree that our excess deaths are high, but I don't know if they're COVID high, right? Like, don't forget, we're dealing with a ton of suicides, ton more suicides than we used to be dealing with.
Well, right? I'm just saying, like, just in this year alone, like if we look back at just last year or even the last 5 years, if you're talking about like a 50% overhead on these deaths that are unaccounted for. Like, and it's entirely in time with this whole pandemic. There's very little question. Like, it's a hypothesis until proven, but I'm saying that it's a pretty high likelihood in my mind.
Pretty good correlation.
Yeah, like
no doubt. But again, excess deaths accounts for all deaths.
Right? Yeah, I know there's other things going on.
Any engineer who's worth their salt knows that more deaths occur at home by accident than occur in the workplace.
Well, look, we've done studies on this that have cost millions of dollars. That if you walk into your bathroom, it is very likely that you could slip on your soap and die.
Right.
And much more so than then you'll get into a car accident within 2 miles of your home.
Really, we should ban assault soap.
What we should do we should ban assault soap. What we really need to do is ban assault proximity, because it is very likely that you'll die somewhere around you.
Oh, so really, I mean, bodies might just be the problem.
Being anywhere near you is an issue.
So perhaps if we were all beings of energy and spirit, that might just be the safest thing.
Well, it's more or less at the end of the day, you're more likely, and I do this too, right? When I'm home, all of the OSHA shit. Well, that's a nice manual, but I don't really pay attention to it. So I have my yearly visit to the hospital. That's a real thing. Not one of those visits has happened because of something that's happened at work, right? This year it was the arm dislocating. Last year it was a metal fleck that I got in my eye while grinding some metal. So
That's
I
am fully able to say that because I have done something almost as stupid. All right.
I turn around. I sat down. I'm like, you know what? This is going to take me 3 seconds to cut. I don't feel like tracking down my safety glasses. I'm just going to go do it.
Oh, you penis!
you gotta put on the safety McGlarses.
It was incredibly stupid. Like no doubt whatsoever.
Be happy that you still have your damn eyes.
I think 2018.
One fleck could have killed your entire brain. What was wrong with you?
Technically true.
No, it was funny. I visited my brother today and saw my niece and nephew, and it was funny because they were playing with that Crayola goop shit.
Yeah,
and of course they have the glitter they can put in, and I'm just sitting there watching his daughter open this tube of glitter. I'm like, oh god! And I said, don't get that in your she's opening it like the same way I've opened up shredded lettuce before, where it could just explode in the air from. And I'm just like, don't do that. No. You don't want to get that in your eyes. It'll make you go blind. Yeah. And my older brother chimes in. He's like, yes, it will.
But yeah, I mean, I'm used to having the yearly hospital visit, and I am sure, absolutely positive, that the majority of people that are at home have nothing better to do because they can't go to work,
right,
are doing all kinds of shit with power tools.
Oh, certainly.
Possible.
Right? So,
yes.
I know my little brother who's basically at home right now. I know he's doing fun stuff in the garage.
Right. So I'm just throwing it out there. I understand it doesn't cancel out. I understand that maybe I sound a little bit conspiratorial.
Let's say that 50% of the 50% overhead is probably COVID. That's a nice round bullshit number that people could probably hang on to.
Sure, why not?
And again, I have to stress this. That is a bullshit number. A bullshit number. I took that right out of my ass. It's not going back in.
I don't think there's any way to well, I think that's part of the problem, right? Is at the end of the day, if we're talking about trying to get an accurate tally, paying hospitals to run tests is probably not the right way to do it.
So it's got to be part of it. I can't go into all the details on it just because I can't expose people on that. But at the end of the day, paying the hospitals to do the tests is fine. Where I have a contention is paying them for positives.
Yes.
Yeah. But doing the tests absolutely has to be.
Yes.
And that is
absolutely.
That is actually the majority of that COVID patient bonus they get. It doesn't become fungible dollars. It pays for the test and the treatment, and that's it. So the hospital is still at a net loss because that bed is taken up in a COVID ward where they can't put another patient in there.
And not to mention
there are hospitals. And here's the other thing: with all the kids going back to college right now, there's that plus other factors that are behind it. There are surges going on all over the country right now, and there are places so a hospital typically is going to operate around 90% capacity. Their base load is around 90%. They usually have a 10% surge capacity or less.
Yes.
But that's typical because they want to have beds taken up because that's how they make money at all.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, kind of like a hotel in that. Kind of like a grim hotel. The reason why hospitals looked empty for a lot of this is because they decreased a lot of other stuff to make that capacity. So they went from 10% capacity to 30% overhead, and then 30% surge capacity, rather. The problem is right now, a lot of the people who put off other things like cancer treatments or screenings for colon cancer,
they're getting slammed with something else now.
All that fun shit is coming back to roost right now because there's a lot of serious ailments.
Well, and that's kind of the point. When people start talking about the excess deaths, I agree with you. There are excess deaths, but we have a huge, absolutely unprecedented change in our behavior.
I'd say right now, your point on say August and September about excess deaths is basically well counted. when you're talking about back in like March, April, let's say March through July, I would say that region of time, your excess deaths there are going to be largely due to things like COVID. And that's where I would say that 50%. Right? That's where I would say that 50% figure is probably more accurate. So right now, it's probably more bullshit.
I don't know about that.
There's also a lot of other
right?
fucky stuff that was going on during that same time period too, where places were just having to keep the doors open.
So speaking at an individual who worked with a national lab, so I've never been at all through this whole entire thing non-essential, right? Sure. I support the defense of the nation. I am not non-essential. So when we take a look back in March and April, March we started at 50% on site, and then all of a sudden we declined to like 25% on site, and we were holding at 25% on site for a very, very long time. We have the number of people in my site that have actually contracted COVID. I can count on probably two hands, and that's a stretch, right? It might be one hand. But I stopped caring about the numbers, a month ago, right? When I get a corporate spam on that every day, I just don't care. Yeah. So you start looking at that, and this is New York. Again, I know New York is unique, but New York actually accounts for the majority of the COVID deaths in the country as a portion of the population.
And we all know exactly where that fucking figure came from, too.
Oh, we all do.
Yeah. That guy, I hope Cuomo gets his ass stuck in prison over this shit.
He won't.
Fuck that guy.
He really.
I know he won't, but fuck that guy.
If you dive into New York, if you dive into New York politics, like actual New York politics,
he'll never get cut. He'll never get pinched.
It is some of the most corrupt shit that exists in this country. Right, like,
and it has been.
It has
beyond, been for at least the last 100 years.
And it really is. Like, it's
watch Gangs of New York.
That's a whole. Yeah, that's a separate issue. But so I mean, Cuomo absolutely screwed the pooch on this. And every single time you see somebody sit there and talk about how the blue states did better because they locked down hard, you look at their numbers. Their numbers are fucking shit.
Oh yeah, no, they're horrible.
At least relative rate, right? Relative rate numbers. Their numbers are horrible shit. It's like double or triple or as much as a factor of 10 of what everybody else did in the rest of this nation who didn't lock down. It's crazy.
Yeah, counterintuitive, you might say.
I you know what, I've tried. So again, I work at a lab. I deal with scientists. I deal with people who think, and they're like, how is it that this infection control measure wasn't as effective? You think that we should be just coughing and sneezing in people's face? You're like, no, I don't think we should be doing that. But at the same time, locking everybody up together does not seem to be a sound strategy.
Well, here's the thing. Like I said, kind of a little while ago about this. Like we're and this is what I've repeatedly. We're a nation of adults. We should be able to make adult decisions. One of those decisions is whether or not to go outside and get yourself infected with something. And clearly from the thousands of fucking assholes out there who are somehow immune in the media's eyes from any consequences, somehow that's permitted, and we're going to then consider the rest of us as somehow adult children that need to be told to stay home. Fuck you. Just what is the logic of all that shit?
Never minding which ones are acting like literal children.
Right. It's so back-asswards.
Let's just admire for a moment how the scientific establishment and the medical establishment in one fell swoop utterly undermined their own credibility.
Oh, you mean like how racism is worse than COVID?
Yeah.
How racism, and here's the best part: the 600 fucking doctors that they had sign that. You know how some of them were janitorial staff, and one of them's a fucking journalist. It's just like the 1,500 signatures on the IPCC bullshit, and then half of them sued to get their names taken off of it.
Oh my god, yes. The IPCC, yeah, but so like, you know what actually really makes me happy is I dove into the IPCC stuff, and I took so much flack for that for years, and then we dive into this, and now all of a sudden everybody's like, well, wait a minute now, this seems to be bullshit, and you're like, yeah, Yeah, it was. It was bullshit 3 years ago. It was
Yeah,
bullshit
it's
8 years
really
ago.
interesting, hindsight being what it is.
Well,
When
it's
people bother to look, that is to say.
well, here's the other thing. Like when you talk, like I said, with the IPCC reports, the ARs, I only give a shit about Working Group One's reports because they're the only people that actually show me data that matters.
Oh,
They,
But
they
even
show
by the
they
then,
way,
show
this
their
is
data and they show
this is
even
the
then,
climate
Working
change
Group
reports,
1,
just for anybody listening unfamiliar
yes,
with
the
IPCC
yes,
reports.
AR 5 and AR 35, sorry 3, 4, 5, and 6.
even then, Working Group 1 still has so much confirmation bias.
Yeah,
It's
but like, at least they have to show their data and their analysis before. I don't like their conclusions are always the opposite of what they show.
yes,
or the
and
most
it's so
extreme.
weird. It's so fucking
Like
weird.
it's the opposite of the graph that's on the same fucking page.
Like
But they
the
show the graph.
CDC gun
They show the
studies.
graph.
Well,
The most important
yeah,
thing is
yeah.
they show the data that they're talking about, and that's the
Yes.
only part that matters. And they have these thick texts full of data. Here's what they say is happening by observation. Okay, I can read up on that. It all looks good. Here's what they say is happening from their simulation work. Okay, I can read that. I can do the simulations. Like we showed the websites before. You can go do the CMUP 6 or whatever. You can actually follow up and do work.
CMIP6 is going to be the most recently updated one.
Or
CMIP5
5
is what
rather.
you did, yeah.
Yeah, so he can go and you can actually do the same things and run their own sensitivity analyses, and you can see the same data that's on the page in front of you. So all that looks great. And then they start talking, and then the bullshit just comes in. But when they're talking about what they did, they're very clear, straightforward, and upfront. And that's the part I like. And I love that they do that in other reports. They should continue to do that. That is exactly how you're supposed to do it. And then they just start pontificating out of nowhere. You can tell where a policy guy comes in because it's just bullshit.
Well, I think the funniest thing that I always dive into, right? So you're always, as an engineer, you're trained to pick the one metric that you evaluate your problem with, right? Maybe there's 2, maybe there's 3, but typically there's 1, and that 1 is the one that determines whether it's cost effective to take action or not cost effective to take action.
So a name you'll hear very often in industry in these cases is either a coefficient of whatever or a figure of merit.
Yes.
So if you have a FOM on a project, that is probably how you're going to be judged at the end of the day as cost effective, not cost effective, etc. Or a coefficient of performance if you're doing refrigeration, for example.
So the factor of efficacy, if you will, is always going to be the sensitivity of the entire climate sensitivity to carbon dioxide. I don't give a shit what you tell me. At the end of the day, I want to know what the actual effect carbon dioxide is having on our environment. The rest of it can go to fucking hell.
Well,
right? The rest of it can go to hell.
Everybody who's gone through basic chemistry lab, your first year chemistry lab, if you have to do UV vis, and you have to, then you're going to do a bunch of different things, and then you do your IR spec.
Yep.
What's the one thing you do not want inside your sample for IR spec? Period. Ever. Water. Why?
Because it is the absorbance of all of IR.
That is the vast majority of the IR absorption that happens in our atmosphere. And if there's a reason that's never on the graph, it's because it would make everything else look like a couple of dashed lines in the bottom next to the axis.
It really would. And so you dive into the actual, but you dive into the sensitivity, right? And that's like the go-to metric. And their response is, well, we've got a lot of divergent answers depending on which source you use. I'm like, all right, so you simulated on one hand and you actually took some data on the other. And you went, well, shit, we're just going to throw all this together even though it doesn't mishmash. And you're like, wait a minute now.
Like, they're getting better. I appreciate that they're getting better. And that's what they should do. And they should be criticized. And it shouldn't be personal attacks. You can say this, that, and the other about their personal hygiene or whatever. That's not going to help.
Oh my God, climate Twitter is the worst.
But if you're just talking about the data that comes out of the IPCC looks good. I'll say that. I
totally agree.
When they start pontificating, and you can tell a policy nitwit with his bow tie comes in, just stop. Just point to the graph on the page and tell me how that's different than last time.
Yes.
Just pretend I can actually look at a graph and understand it. because I can't read Working Group 2 and 3 because they sound so asinine.
I've tried to read Working.
So bad.
You know,
I can't do
what
it.
I think the funniest thing was, right? So for the last 10 years, our assumption has been that 2 degrees C above pre-industrial, which, by the way, for people listening to this, 2 degrees C above pre-industrial is 1 degree C above today's temperatures. Right? It's actually not that much. They're sitting there and they're taking as their baseline reference for us not having intervened as 1850. Just throwing that out there. And, oh, by the way, that's after a collapse in temperature over the last 2,000 years. So there's a whole bunch of bullshit built into the metric, but that's what they're doing.
Now, I can understand, and this is just going to make me upset that I'm going to say it, because there's so much loaded bullshit behind this guy. But when you consider that, like, I can fully understand where someone's coming from when they talk about not the magnitude of the change, but the speed at which it's happening. And Bill Nye tried to make and this is where I was upset. Bill Nye tried to make this point, but unfortunately, he's mired himself in so much bullshit after, say things like sex junk, that he just doesn't have any credibility that he'd already squandered remaining to push behind this.
Yeah, the only thing...
I don't think the guy is...
But here's the problem with the rate of change argument, which I've seen, right? I've seen. Here's the problem with it. The IPCC openly admits in its assessment report that the rate of change between 1910 and 1950 or 1940 or whatever it is, I think it's 1940, is not caused by humankind. We just didn't have enough combustion engines running. We weren't really burning a lot of shit back then. We were basically still... I mean, what a lot of people don't realize in the history of engineering and society and engineering infrastructure is a lot of the shit that we deal with now is very new. Like electricity, plumbing, all that shit, that's new stuff in any sort of centennial time.
What I was going to go with is a lot of times people focus on just since like 1980, which I can understand that. And, we talk about rapid change, and this is where we have a data problem. We just don't have the kind of data density from the past.
Yeah.
Sorry, my wife's arguing with me.
All right. But yeah, no, that's a completely valid point. We don't have the density of data for really our modern era to make a lot of these.
I'm a data guy.
Really, you could say they're built on, they're castles built on sand.
Well, I mean, the point that I was going for is between 1910 and 1940, and the rate of increase between like 1980 and today, they're actually just about exactly the same. I mean, two or three decimal places rate of change the same. And the 1910 to 1940 data does not have a human influence, whereas the 1980 to today and the rate of change does have human influence. So when you argue that the rate of change overall is somehow drastically different, well, the rate of change overall doesn't really reflect anything different from what we have identified per the IPCC as a natural rate of change.
So this is the part where I'd like to have somebody else like who's say in favor of that argument come in and present data and convince me differently.
I'll have to see what I can arrange, because we really should have that conversation.
Because that's really hard to do, because a lot of times people just become fanatical about it, and look, it's not a personal attack to be wrong,
right?
Like I said before,
I mean, that's science. Science is a series of being wrong.
Yeah, you spend most of your time being wrong about things in science, and for good reason.
The key is, though, that in most sciences, when you are wrong and when you're identified as being wrong, we drop the issue. And when we start talking about things like climate or psychology, both of those have a tendency to keep dead theories running. And they just zombify the shit out of them.
That's not science at that point. It's dogma. Right. It's religious dogma, which, it's fine to have a religion.
Yes, it is. Scientism is an excellent word, and everybody should know what it is.
It's fine to have a religion and to have faith in something, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like when you start applying that to something like, I don't know, a natural philosophy like science, that's no longer in the natural. It becomes metaphysical. Your belief in something to make it real is not going to influence the way a thermometer works. You know, unless you're holding a thermometer while believing and making your whole body warmer. Shit like that's just not going to matter to the environment.
Well,
so that's where I have an issue with it, is when you come at me with dogma, I'm just not going to be impressed. You have to show me data, and I'm just saying we don't have the same kind of data density in the further back, in our historical record. It's just not as reliable as the present.
And that's
always going to be true. It's always going to be the case.
That's
we have
true.
better data now than before. So I can't be asking for a unicorn to show up with better data from the past.
And I accept that, but then when you start talking about the folks sitting there and saying, "Hey, yeah, look, the models did really well between this time period of 1980 to 2000," and then you sit there and you start looking at the historical data that we do have, plus the historical data from the proxy records, right? All of a sudden, the models can't do that. So either our proxy records are trash, which is perfectly fine. But then you have to throw out an entire field of metrics, right? that we actually measure this shit by. You're like, okay, we're going to ignore the last 10,000 years, right? But if you ignore the last 10,000 years, right, then all of a sudden you can't make the claims that this is somehow a radical and drastic change. The only way to make those claims that this is a radical and drastic change is to accept that the last 2,000 years happened, or the last 10,000 years happened, or 100,000 years happened, and then to turn around and sit there and compare that today, you say, hey, well, if we include that data set, this isn't a radical or drastic change. This is something that's perfectly natural.
This is why I got into this whole Twitter thing, and this is why I don't like the dogma part of it. I had a guy who just assumes out of nowhere that I'm a climate denier. Comes in, different person. And I fully accept that they're upset about something, or they're heavily invested in the issue. And all of that is good. You should be invested in the issues that you're passionate about. You should go full bore into them. If they're something that you should be advocating for, go for that. If not, drop it and change to pick a different passion on what you're going to invest in. But just to drive in whole hog like that and just start acting like a religious zealot. I just told this person I'm not going to deal with a religious zealot. Or I'm not going to deal with a zealot. And
climate Twitter is the worst, man. So you shouldn't
I fully understand that. It's just at the same time,
climate Twitter is as bad as identitarian Twitter.
I don't know about that. I think climate Twitter is actually worse.
That's a bold statement, sir.
At least identitarian Twitter blocks you. Climate Twitter, you get stuck in a thread where you go to bed and there's 300 comments to whatever you put out fucking 12 hours ago while you were drunk.
Okay, now real quick, which is worse than climate Twitter or K-pop Twitter?
Oh, that's
K-pop I would say is arguably the worst thing that's happened to Twitter since the bronies.
I mean, you say that, and I have no interaction with them. Literally, my entire interaction with K-pop is interacting through you.
Imagine My Little Pony porn, but now it's instead of that, it's teens dancing in fan cams on fucking Twitter.
And all of them
constantly, you just don't want to watch.
Also, on top of that, are that you remember the "Don't Attack Britney" video from way back?
Yeah, it's like that.
All of them are like that.
It's like a million people, like a literal million people like that.
Really?
Yeah,
they're sad.
It's astounding.
And they just reply to you with a fan cam to get views, and the way that they get views is by nobody watching the damn thing, but Twitter counts it anyway. So they think they're fucking popular.
Oh my god. Well, so I guess I don't know, right? I don't. Like I said, most of my experience with K-pop Twitter is literally through you, Craig, because you sit there and you bitch about K-pop Twitter all the fucking time, and I'm like, what the fuck is this K-poop shit? I think you've had to define it to me twice. Once while I was sober, and once while I was drunk. You had to explain to me what the fuck it is this whole realm of Twitter that I just don't interact with.
So what happens is if you go to the trending tab and you'll see just random Korean names pop up and you're just like, all right, what the fuck is this? Or someone's talking, they have they have just random bullshit song names, which, sound all lovey-dovey or whatever the fuck. And you're just like, all right, this is clogging this shit up. What is this crap? And you just, now I just report it all as spam because it fucking is.
So the last time we got together, we talked about why it is that you have so many followers, and the short answer is because you dive into these trends, and I just don't even bother with that tab because that tab is cancer. Every time I have clicked in that tab, it is a whole bunch of people arguing about shit that doesn't fucking matter.
I mean,
This
if
is
you
a
get down
true
to the
statement.
basis of it.
Like trending Twitter tab is literally like societal decay become manifest.
Well, I mean, it does at least to some small degree, provide a useful outlet for sociology.
Sociopathology maybe, but
I feel attacked, Beach. So I don't know if you know my buddy Beach is on Twitter. There's this I guess this trend going around was it blah 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 which video game opinion you got that results and okay, this person needs to go back to speaking English properly, but whatever. So this is apparently is a thing people are replying to. And then he said, gamers are scum even beneath end users and programmers when I worked IT. Even worse than CraigBob99. As inconceivable as that is. I feel attacked, sir. Oh no, he's a buddy. You know, he is a party line, like party person Democrat. So he and I, like election years, he and I'll bat back and forth, but it's all banter.
Oh, well, that's good.
You know, I used to have a good like Twitter fellow that I used to like to deal with because he was a socialist and he was relatively rational. But then he it was after the 2016 election, and again we've talked about this before, where this is like a different phase or realm of society, and he just like went off the deep end, telling me that like he had this great sixth sense about magical things that were going to happen and how clearly there was all this corruption, and all that shit went tits up. Right, all of it went tits up, and I think my last
hold
like
on.
I just
hold on. Do we mean the Russia collusion?
It was Russia collusion. Stuff? It was no, I don't deal with Q.
Okay,
Q
just
like,
clarifying.
Oh God, yeah. Dude, and the best thing is everybody just accuses you of being a Q-tard. It's
yes,
like, I love I love QAnon because I love to sit just watch them be stupid.
Oh, I can't.
Like we were just talking about dogma. Like if you want to talk about religious zealots, QAnon is hilarious.
I always thought that
hearts.
all of them were in on the joke, and then I realized they weren't.
Nope. They are unfortunately the butt of the joke, and there's a lot.
And that made me really sad.
It's like
why are there so many of them boomers? Why?
It's like
why boomers?
It's
why?
like seven-assed monkey from South Park. They're all the butt of the joke.
I just want them.
Well,
to
bless
not
their
be that
sweethearts.
stupid.
They're trying. They are trying.
Oh yeah, bless their heart.
Oh, there's somebody south in Mason-Dixon land.
Hey, come down to Florida, have bath salts, join in the fun.
Okay, so I've got something that
doesn't that turn you into like flesh-eating zombie?
Yes. Yes,
good.
I'm like 90% sure that bath salts turn you into zombies.
This is now old news to us because it's obvious. It's obvious day at stupid camp. From the conclusions in the blurb summary here. Shit, wearing a cloth mask, that doesn't stop your particulates from getting into your nose through your pants isn't going to be able to stop something coming through when it's on top of your face. Like,
you know what actually pisses me off about this shit though? Right, they show this all the time where and the way they do this test is very, very interesting, right? So basically they take a fucking pipe, right? And they wrap this material around one end of the pipe. And then they shove it into the pipe and they create a seal and they say how many particulates, and this is like photometry.
The basic one, okay, yeah. But they also do the fit tests.
Yes, the fit test, but the APFs, right? The APFs when you start talking N95s aren't particularly good. Right.
Well, if you're properly fitted, then you have a pretty good protection factor.
That's assuming A,
a lot of
that you were properly fit test, and B, that you were properly fit test to the actual manufacturer and that specific equipment. Because when we actually dive into fit testing stuff, there's a huge argument with OSHA because basically, essentially, OSHA's arguing that face masks do more than they're technically fit test to. The actual unions, and I side with the unions on this. The unions came in and they said, hey, yeah, your fit test means that your APF should be 5. But in reality, you're sitting there and rating it as a 10. And in most cases, it's bullshit. Like 3. It's fucking bullshit.
So, but at the same time, though, like if you're properly wearing an N95 and you're using it in an appropriate context, it will protect you the way that it's rated. Whereas a piece of fabric over your face, which, like I said, doesn't stop the particles in your fart from getting out, is not going to stop virus particles or droplets from getting in. So when they come up with a study like this that says, oh yeah, N95s and surgicals will block things, but a cloth mask won't, no fucking shit. That's what what anybody in the profession should have been telling you from the start.
Yes.
Well,
this is what I was saying from the start, and I know you got on my ass about this for a little bit, which is, by the way, thanks for that always. But at the same time, I wasn't saying you should wrap a piece of fabric around your face. I was saying wear a goddamn mask like you're supposed to.
Well, so again,
part of that is to protect other people from you, and then thereby protect yourself in that sense. But like I always said, I'm going to wear an N95 because I want to protect my ass too.
I think when I got on your ass about it, though, right? Part of it was the general applicability of that kind of ruling. It's one thing to turn around and say, hey, an individual who is infected and we have to deal with source control, sure, throw them in an N95 and that'll help everybody around them. But in general, it's not really going to do much for you as an individual, and it's certainly not going to do much for people who are asymptomatic.
Well, that's the thing.
That's really what it comes down to.
But that asymptomatic part is the part I was kind of harping on, is that if your primary concern is preventing a spread from you, if you're potentially asymptomatic, and that's going to largely cut down on the infection spread, everybody should at least be wearing an ASTM level 1 procedural mask, or procedure mask. If you're looking to protect your own ass too, then your base minimum should be an ASTM level 3, which is an actual surgical mask. They don't use level 1 in the operating theater. Just FYI. So you want to wear at least an ASTM level 3 mask, and that's going to give you, in this use case, so not general, but in this use case, about the same protection as an N95 mask. So that'll protect you and whoever you're around relatively the same as an N95 if you were an ASTM level 3. But again, specific to this use case.
But ultimately, though, that's kind of the point, though, is asymptomatic spread hasn't been demonstrated, and masks haven't been demonstrated.
That has been demonstrated. It was demonstrated in Japan. It was demonstrated in Korea. It's been demonstrated in the United States.
There are some cases where asymptomatic spread happens, but there isn't a demonstration that masks stop it.
No, there. All right, so let's say this: there hasn't been an instance where masks were the only control measure used.
Yes.
If you're looking for an isolated study on just the mask as a control measure, unfortunately, that's not going to pass an ethics board.
We just don't have those gold star tests. That would be nice.
You're not. There's no way you're going to get that
not
past
true.
an ethics board.
If China releases all their data, we might actually have those tests.
Oh, that's never going to happen.
There's a dozen different ways. There's a dozen different ways that we could come up with a comparable test. And we have never come up with a comparable test. If we're talking about source control, there is tests for that.
You can't even do that with rhinovirus because it's not going to pass an ethics board. I'm just telling you that right now. There's no way to get that.
So if the argument is that we have no scientifically valid test, and regardless of whether you want to argue it's because of an ethics board or not, then we shouldn't be making it policy. And that's really the point that I was making.
Yeah, look, I'm right there with people. Generally speaking, when it comes to public policy, you should have some scientifically sound measures behind what you're going to be prescribing. And the fact of the matter remains here that when we look at the way things are done, the multi-factor approach by control measures is always going to be what's going to be done because it's the best way to do it. You're just not going to get past that point. You're not going to be able to get an individual study done on this separately.
And that's fine. And that's fine. As long as nobody passes it as policy, I don't give a shit.
Well, again, like I said before, we're a nation of adults,
Right.
And we're a nation. We have private entities, and I've advocated for this too. Like we should, if a company wants to require you to wear a mask, and if you want to go into that store, then wear the fucking mask or don't go in the store.
And I agree with that.
They have every right to say that to you. I don't think the government should be coming down on the people going in the store, out of the store. If they're, unless they're going in there harassing people, there's already laws in the books for that. You don't need to come up with new bullshit to layer on top of it. There's just no need for it.
I'm fully on board with that.
And everybody should be able to agree to this because it's going to accomplish the goal that all people who are power hungry want anyway. So if they can't admit that it's just about power, that would force them into saying it.
And that's kind of where my again, it's a New York perspective for me. Cuomo mandated masks in March, and I still do not believe that this actually does anything for asymptomatic spread. Right? I really don't. I truly, honestly don't. I haven't seen any data that indicates that it alone is responsible for limiting asymptomatic spread. Basically, what I end up seeing is a whole bunch of fucking germaphobes voluntarily take on masks, and you're like, the person that turns around and has a Martha fucking Stewart house in rural ass China is probably going to be less susceptible than I am with my shithole filled house and shitloads of boxes everywhere, because that's just the way it's going to be. The people who are germaphobes, and they're going to adopt a panoply of measures to avoid disease, and individuals who are not going to adopt a panoply of measures for disease, saying that masks are somehow effective, that just pisses me the fuck off, because that's the reality.
A panoply.
Whatever, panoply. Just because I'm not, I live in the north.
None of us are English majors here. It's fine. We can move
Fuck
on.
you and your pop and your other shit up there. It's soda, you
pop?
cunt.
What the fuck are you talking about? It's soda.
Do none of you people drink colas?
All right. I think ultimately the real test is, what do you call a ice cream and milk combination drink?
Ice cream and
milkshake?
Milk? Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, it all depends.
Is there some other word for this concoction?
There is actually another word. If you cross the Connecticut River, it becomes a frap.
Oh, what?
Right? And otherwise,
you mean like a frappe?
No, I mean no. Frappe is different. Frappe is like Dunkin' Donuts and retardedness.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's sweet.
It is legitimately so. In the once you cross the Connecticut River, and that is the dividing line. It is a frap if you mix ice cream with milk. However, it is a milkshake for most of the rest of the country, I think.
Yeah, I've never heard it called anything other than that, and I have never heard of a frap until literally now.
Oh, well, that's good.
Hey, you learn something new every day.
I went from New York. I moved from New York as a child, raised with milkshake as the appropriate pronunciation of the drink I wish to order. And then I went to Massachusetts. And I ordered a milkshake, and they shook the milk and handed it to me.
What cunts?
Wow.
Right? Like, why am I paying you for this?
Did you shake it and hand it back and say, "Now give me a milkshake"? So, what is this? A weird kind of? Is this like a weird kind of transaction we're doing here, or what?
I have no idea. They're just
what kind of juvenile? What kind of juvenile gang initiation is this shit?
So who calls it pop? That can't be the Northeast.
That's the PNW, man.
The PNW. Where's that?
Pacific Northwest.
Pacific Northwest? Oh,
yeah,
fuck that.
The place that's on fire right now.
You cross the Rockies and they have pop.
Oh, fuck them.
So down here you have, like, in the Midwest, you'll have soda pop, and then over on the East Coast you'll have soda.
Unless you're in Georgia, in which case it's Coke.
Everything's Coke.
That sounds like a good place to be, because that's the only real soda. Everything else is
sugar water, which is exactly what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, sugar water with food coloring.
Well, I mean,
that's what Pepsi is.
No, Pepsi is an abomination.
Pepsi is an abomination.
And it's still beat.
Pepsi is to Coke what Coors is to Budweiser.
So I have an absolute soda addiction. It's a real problem. I have tried
Shit.
I have tried to move away from it, but now I have enough money where I can afford it, and it makes it even harder, right? Like
I could afford my diabetes, goddamn.
that's fucking right. So I
Where's my
remember
Metformin? I paid for the shit.
I went to school, and so I started at the school, and it was okay. And then all of a sudden, it was clear that their contract with Coca-Cola ran out, and they switched to Pepsi in all of their vending machines. And that is the only time where I have suspended my soda habit for a significant period of time.
Dude, I went through this shit at UF, and I was happy going out to, leaving the place, going to the store, getting myself a Coke at night. On occasion, I come back from playing lacrosse and shit, and like, all right, I need a soda. And there's a good soda. And then all of a sudden there's fucking Pepsi, and I'm like, what the hell happened?
Yes.
The only good thing about a Pepsi contract is you get Dr. Pepper. Everything else is shit.
It's like you walk in and somebody just took a shit on the floor.
It's like
and you're like, why? Why did you do this? Nobody wants that.
I mean, I have to say here, fellas, I'm personally offended as a Pepsi fan, but,
Well, I mean, you don't count as a human being.
Look,
so.
It's okay to be wrong. You're just wrong.
I was gonna go with an otherkin statement, but I'm okay with that.
It's not wrong to be wrong, fam. It's just wrong to remain wrong. We're gonna gang up on you here. We got 2 out of 3.
I mean, don't forget
I
though,
actually
right?
don't care though.
Craig and I are engineers,
so
we could probably come up with an entire paper that is at least 10 to 25 pages as to why you should drink Pepsi.
Yeah, let me just hop on to SciFinder real quick.
We are the only 2 people that are able to mathematically prove to you why you're wrong in your beverage choice.
Now, I would have to care. That's the big caveat here. But having said that, we've gotten so far out of field.
That's okay.
Oh, no, it is.
Yeah, we started off with
the whole thing.
nuclear reactors.
Yeah, no, we did. I have got another article here I do want to drop on you guys. It's kind of been common knowledge, but it's good to have something that actually tells us.
All right.
So,
have vitamin D in your diet.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, we have something that actually says, have this.
There's a reason this is a routine blood test.
So
without COVID being involved, you need to have, if you're indoors a lot, take vitamin D.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've been told that Fauci's taking like 5 times the regular daily dose. So,
Well, that's probably stupid.
I struggle immensely because it was like one study in the last week that found that vitamin D supplements or something like that improves your survivability of COVID.
It improves your general health. A lot of people have a vitamin D deficiency.
Right.
Like I said, it's a routine blood test for normal general practitioner visits. So if you go to your doctor and you get a routine blood test, if you aren't getting your vitamin D checked, get it checked.
Yes.
And then you're probably going to have to supplement because most of the country spends way too much time indoors.
Yes.
Me included, by the way.
You can pretty much safely assume that if you live a normal American life, that you need some more vitamin D.
So you should probably take a 2,000 international unit per day tablet, and that's one of the generic sizes. For my purposes, I'll take anywhere between 2,000 and 5,000. But I've been indoors like a lot in the last decade, so that's the reason why. When I was outside more often, I didn't need to have that much supplementation in my diet. Fauci taking like 5 times whatever the fuck, like if he's taking on the same order of supplementation I take, then he's got to be inside a lot too. If he's doing it prophylactically for COVID, that's a really bad justification.
Yes, thank God, because this has been pissing me off. Is you see like Scott Adams. And I know I understand cartoonist and all that shit, but he's been promoting this shit for
he was an engineer too.
No, he was an economist.
Or that yeah. But anyway, he did number shit.
Yes, he has a general. It's almost inexcusable to see him make these claims. But yeah, no,
Look,
I see.
if you drink acidophilus milk instead of regular cow's milk, you'll live longer. So says dumbass over there on the corner.
Yeah,
If he's promoting shit like I said, for your general health, you should have an adequate amount of vitamin D in you.
yes.
If you're not getting it, then you should probably get it in. Adjust your diet as needed. I eat more oranges now. Shit like that. And there, that's usually just vitamin C and stuff. There's D in there.
Yeah. Well, there's barely any D.
If you get the orange juice, just look for the calcium and vitamin D supplemented orange juice, the one with the blue label on it. If you're in Florida,
or here's a groundbreaking suggestion: get off the fucking couch and go outside. Just throwing that out there.
I mean, I thought I said something to that effect already, but if it needed to be specified, there it is.
I think the only thing that pisses me off about this is the people are trying to draw a causal relation between COVID and vitamin D deficiency.
We just don't have enough time for data.
Yeah, well, we fall back on a lot of that. I mean, all of this is far too new for us to really know anything, so we kind of just have to fall on generalities, too.
Again, and with the risk side of things, like I said before, a lot of it is because we had all of these long-term sequelae from SARS and from MERS, which were horrendous, and we're seeing them crop up again now with COVID. SARS-2 is not SARS-2 out of nowhere. It's the same fucking virus with some other shit attached to it. Like, we know that there's a lot of these complications that could happen.
Almost like it was grown in a lab.
Almost, right? Like, we
I'm
know a lot of
you guys on with Kevin so that we can talk about that, because he's gone into quite a lot of that.
Like, we know a lot of the long-term sequelae that are likely to come out of this. We've seen a lot of the same kind of shit happening to people, and we know it's going to be bad. We know it's going to be very bad. The thrombopathology, just to start off with, the blood clotting issues is a huge problem. And then there's lung scarring in all these quote asymptomatic patients where you're finding the lung scarring coming up. This is not lung capacity they're going to gain back very quickly, if at all. So, like, this is a major problem, and that's the main reason why we need to stop it in its tracks. It's not like, you're going to get the sniffles and be better, and that could be even.
Yeah, you might be, but you might not be.
Assume 80% of people are going to be just fine.
Well, it's like the bag of peanuts analogy. You can get a bag of peanuts, and one of them is poisoned. Do you really want to eat that bag of peanuts?
Here's the thing, though. I don't like falling back on the feminist logic like that.
Yes. I will happily take the bag of peanuts. I believe herd immunity is the appropriate way to go. Sweden's already got it.
We're not getting. No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
Maybe.
I'm stamping my feet and pouting on this one. No, they don't.
Oh, you can stamp your feet and pout all you want, but like all of that, again, going back to my fantastic governor of the most magnificent state in America. At the end of the day, when you take a look at the curve and what he hit and where he did it, he's claiming credit for all of these goddamn actions. We hit herd immunity in New York. That's why we don't have COVID cases.
So, I actually haven't looked at the data very recently here. So let me just go and pull up my viewer and just check the data for today. Oh god, all the beeping and annoying noises I put in this thing. What the fuck was I thinking?
Functionality. You're an engineer, right?
I mean, it was to let me know that things happened, like that it downloaded the data, etc. Oh, look, everything's going up because that's great. Scroll down to the U.S. Oh, we had a break in Mount Dumbass, and then we have an uptick again. Isn't that beautiful? Hold on a second. I'll just go ahead and I can copy this, and we still don't have a goddamn peak yet, which is great, and we're also accelerating back up again.
Are you talking about all of the U.S. or state-by-state data?
All of the U.S. I don't this is not so. This is the same data that Johns Hopkins uses. That's been translated with a gist on GitHub by someone else. And that's where I pull the data from. So this is the same data that they run on, except I've done some other manipulations. So anyway, the blue curve at the very top is total cases. Purple curve is active cases. Green is the recovered cases. This is a log linear scale, by the way. and then the lighter blue line is the day over day new cases. So you can see that we had it going down, and then we had the BLM Antifa Karen foothills to Mount Stupid, and then we had that break off, and now we've managed to arrest the decline again because fucking reasons. I'm guessing that given the date of things, this is going to be the return of students and the initiation of new protests out of nowhere. So the last 15 days or so, last 10 or 15 days, we saw a break in the decline and an increase again.
Well, of course, they've had a week to recover from their very long and intensive protests.
Yeah.
Now it's back to another week of.
So you can also see here that we look at the CFRs at the bottom. We have the total cases basis and the concluded cases basis.
And I'll have a link to this in the below.
It is a good data set.
So if you look at this right now, we're bracketing 5%. So we're like, to put it in perspective here, 0.1% or so, 0.01% to 0.02% is 0.02% is like the 2018 flu season. That was a horrible flu season. That hammered people. So that's the CFR typically, or the mortality rate at this point, you can call it, given it's been over for a while. But like it's really kind of the norm. And here, we're looking at 5%. That's horrible.
Don't forget, though, right? That CFR is grossly distorted based on what actions were taken by a lot of Democrat governors, right? Like Pennsylvania and New York shoved a whole bunch of people who were infected into fucking nursing homes, which wouldn't have happened under normal circumstances.
Again, this is a log scale, and all right. So the two lines at the bottom are not log scale; they're on the other axis on the right side. But everything on the left is log scale. The red line up above in the middle of the other lines that's the deaths line, the total deaths. So the stuff you're talking about kind of already happened. Like it's not so much happening right now.
But I mean, also you take a look at that red line, right? Your inflection point is old.
Actually, let me go ahead and go back to this, and I can add in the dailies on the new deaths. There we go.
Because your inflection point's way the fuck back there, and it's mostly like where it is because of what's already happened.
I'm going to increase the smoothing radius to 50 days too, so that we can get some of the wiggle out of this. There we go.
There wasn't much wiggle in what you had there.
Well, yeah, but you'll see what I mean. Here you go. So I added in the deaths line, and it was a little bit more ripply before. You can see that the new cases line is also a little less ripply now. But that's a better representation. I'm using effectively a kind of Gaussian kernel on the smoothing.
But again, you're still
good reflection on this.
You're still
in the exponential space.
You're still not your point of inflection is way earlier than where we are today, right?
Because you can actually see the reflection of the new cases versus new deaths. You can see that where the lag period is there in the bump. So the onset of the bump and also the peak of the bump. But you should also expect the depth line to be since it's a convolutionary. It's a convolution of the cases. Then it's going to be kind of smeared out a little bit. But you can see that there's from the onset of rise in new deaths at around 160-ish, and you have the onset of rise in new cases at about 140-ish, so about 20 days. So if you see something that happens like with cases, you should expect that deaths are going to follow about 20 days later. Now, not to the same degree, obviously. We're looking at like a couple orders of magnitude difference here. So that so when you're talking about 5% versus say 1% or whatever, it's almost in your favor in that sense. But if you look at the actual like details of the numbers here, that gap above the blue line between it and the 100,000 mark, that gap is around that 5% difference that we're talking about.
5% difference.
So if you look at the actual like details of the numbers here, that gap above the blue line between it and the 100,000 mark, that gap is around that 5% difference that we're talking about.
I don't know, right? Like,
So 5% isn't really wholly unreasonable here. What I was trying to say is that a lot of the stuff you're talking about has already happened way earlier.
the most recent data from the CDC points that it's like 94.6% for the 65 and older crowd.
Yeah.
And everybody else is on the order of 0.2 to 0.1%.
So,
right? Like,
so again,
the actual so what we have here, right, with your data,
right?
I'm not disputing that the 5% is probably true. It probably is. That's probably
Yeah, I
accurate.
get you're trying to say.
However, we had a whole bunch of Democratic governors stuffing a whole bunch of old people who were infected into nursing homes with a whole bunch of other people who were the most susceptible class to this
and I'm
disease.
saying that is probably responsible for a lot of the stuff that happened earlier in the curve.
But your curve doesn't adjust down afterwards, right? It just continues to grow.
Well,
you're not unless you were to turn around,
you can't take that out of it. Again, this is a very broad picture of things, and the point here is
so the only thing that we could actually look at is the relative rate. And what we're seeing in terms of the relative rate after the inflection point is not a particularly large growth rate in deaths.
So, again, for people who are listening, this is specific to deaths, and we've already discussed that the other sequelae are going to probably be a larger problem here. So deaths are not the only shitty outcome of having this. It's obviously by far the worst, but you could have a long, miserable trail on towards death 10 years later. you could have the rest of your life in an iron lung kind of shitty situation.
I think that's a little bit extreme.
That's pretty extreme.
That's a little bit extreme.
It's pretty extreme, but I'm just saying, like, there are other shitty outcomes here that are going to be a significant
and we legitimately don't know we don't know how long people are going to be having to deal with this, and we don't know what other latent issues this could bring up either.
If SARS is anything if SARS and MERS are anything like a good proxy, and we can imagine that they might be, then there's a significant portion of the population, not like over 50%, but like a significant minority of people who recover from this. You know, say 20% just for a bullshit number, and again, bullshit. But there's going to be a significant minority that are going to have major complications down the road here. And when I say major, I mean anything from having a reduced lung capacity to needing oxygen, or having a very high increase in your likelihood of having cardiac arrest from a blood clot or pulmonary embolism, etc. Like, there's so many
degeneration based on the way this affects the central nervous system too.
And the brain issues, etc., etc. So I'm just saying
say that for almost any disease, though, right? That's not
not like this.
Well, not really, because I mean we have it's evidentiary that this affects.
Here's another example.
In specific ways.
Here's an example we could pull out just for sake of argument. If we look at influenza or the common cold, both of them in this case are going to be applicable. Or scrap those. Never mind. Strep throat. This is a great example. Strep throat has a nasty habit for people who are incapable of overcoming it, of heading down to the kidneys and destroying them. Now, how often does that happen? Very rarely. But how significant of a problem is it to have your kidneys stop functioning? Pretty big.
Sure, but all of that is, again,
that's a very rare instance.
Statistical basis for the population,
right? A very rare instance for strep throat to cause kidney failure. We're talking about many, many, many more times likely that you're going to have reduced lung capacity for probably a significant portion of your life, because 7 years to 20 years is a very large portion of your life. Now, it could be slightly reduced. It could be significantly reduced. That's kind of a who knows until you have it happen situation.
Yeah, well, we fall back into we don't have enough data to really answer these things, so
right.
It's better that we err on the side of
caution. We know about SARS.
See, and that's I disagree that the precautionary principle is a guideline for any sort of policy.
Well, the reason why I bring this up is that we know about SARS and MERS. We've looked at the long-term sequelae of SARS, and because if it's anything like SARS, it's bad news. It looks like it's like SARS.
If this has rabies inserts and maybe others, then that takes things really to a whole nother level of concern.
Well, if it has anything to do, if it's anything like rabies, that's really bad.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a reason it can cross the blood-brain barrier, and like I
Right.
say, we've got to get you guys talking with, with our other resident doctor.
I mean, rabies is a really unique disease.
It
I
is.
I would
Well, yeah, I wouldn't expect
surprised to see crosses between that.
especially over in like the middle of a bat cave in China.
Yeah.
Well,
I
if we're to
mean,
believe
again,
by the
all
way,
this originated in a cave.
By the way, folks, bats
Look.
don't carry rabies; they die from it, just like humans do.
I will offer as my point of contention that I firmly believe that this is something that has come out of a lab. That doesn't necessarily mean it was completely, an artificial life form, so to speak.
I think gain of function research is entirely plausible.
What's that?
It could have been entirely altruistic. They could
Yep.
have been doing gain of function research,
Yep.
and so to make a better vaccine for the bat population. It is entirely plausible that this is just a monumental fuck up of a containment protocol because
And
some jackass went and sold a bat as patient zero down at the market. That's my guess.
That's kind of what I'm getting as a most likely scenario, right? Like, it's absolutely stunning to me that people are like, oh my god, when Trump says this is because of this came from a lab, clearly this is wrong. No, hold on now. Like, there's a virology lab right next to the market.
It's not only a biology lab; it's a BSL-4 lab.
Well, and
Like,
never
there's-
mind, we had
studied
the
nasty shit there.
whistleblower, like 2 weeks ago that came out on
Right.
this?
That late, like, look here. Even if she is,
It was last weekend. I would have loved to jump on the stream with you. I was just exhausted last
even
weekend.
if she was insane, even if she is literally a schizophrenic person, she's in shit serious danger from saying anything
Oh, yeah.
about
yeah,
that, about like that in Hong Kong.
Yes, I mean, we've got 2 fucking VTubers that are basically the same as me. I'm just a cartoon cat. These ones are like anime girls. And
What
they
is a
showed off
VTuber?
their fucking, their subscriber base happened to show that they were in Taiwan, which, by the way, is superior to China. It showed that they were in Taiwan, and or that they had some number of subscribers in Taiwan, and it doesn't list China because China can't watch YouTube. And of course, they were banned for 3 weeks now, and it's a whole big thing because the CCP and Shinny the Pooh have thin skin.
Yeah,
Well, I think the issue isn't that CCP and Winnie the Pooh there have thin skin. It has to do with the fact that American corporations have bent a knee on an absolutely spectacular scale to Chinese
it's staggering.
interests.
Like, they
Right,
have
yeah,
broken their backs for these people.
Oh, don't say that about Hollywood. They're not that bad.
I think I'm okay
This
with saying that
bullshit
about the
sponsored
NBA.
by.
Well, I know I went to see Mulan, didn't you?
Oh yes, I went to see Mulan movie, China #1.
Yeah.
I'm just happy like most of the planet rejected that shit. Fuck them.
What, you don't like views of Uyghur death camps and the beautiful vistas of Xinjiang?
I like the original movie better. Having never seen the second one here, I like the original movie better.
Let's be entirely honest. The only thing that really matters is the Szechuan sauce.
Is this some sort of vague Rick and Morty reference?
It is indeed a vague Rick and Morty
You
reference.
see, I don't watch Rick and Morty. I've never watched it, but I know about the Szechuan sauce because
Oh my god!
because of the autists at fucking McDonald's screaming.
Oh,
You,
Jesus, yes, I remember
You
that.
should. I own very little TV. I own Futurama, and I own all of Rick and Morty, and I highly recommend that you watch Rick and Morty.
Dude, this is the point at which I have to call you a fucking nerd.
No. I believe that title goes to you, my good sir, with your full breakdown of the Dragon Balls and who was fighting who for what reasons. Like, I think you actually went in the last time we streamed to the genealogy of Dragon Balls or something like that, and literally ran the entire stream into a wall. That is a unique title of nerd.
I mean, I'm pretty damn proud of that now.
Well, one can try, right?
I prefer geek. I prefer geek.
Nerd.
No, geek. Although I think that kind of comes with the engineering territory.
It doesn't adjust.
Yeah, how did geek ever get to like a personal term anyway? That's a guy that bites the heads off chickens.
It all depends, right? So ultimately, in nerd versus geek culture, the nerds tend to be like the ones who can talk about the Dragon Ball Z, genetic heritage bullshit. They're very highly specialized, all the way deep down into the.
I'm starting to feel some personal bullshit coming out here.
The depths of the knowledge, where geeks have a rather large panoply of information that they consume.
There we go, panoply again.
Yes, yeah, that's right. It is panoply.
Oh man, that's like a $4 word almost.
What a panoply of bullshit I'm hearing.
Well, all I can say about you fellas is all this circumlocution is just getting to me.
Oh, you busted out the $10 words there.
That's only one of my 9s. I'll save the 10s for a special occasion.
Oh, that's right, because $10 words have the X's.
Right.
It's funny.
Indubitably.
It was a while ago. A guy got upset because the pronunciation of doxing. He was saying it necessitates 2 X's. It's like, yeah. What about foxes and boxes and how many other things can we pluralize here with just the 1 X?
Are you serious?
This is a guy who went fucking nuts because of Hillary, and therefore everything I ever said was wrong after that point.
Well, I mean, didn't you know that going into these conversations?
Well, no, it's funny because this all started over nuclear-powered rockets. The original Orion project, not the one that's actually successful and being operated at NASA right now. And it's funny because at the time, this guy didn't know that at the time, I actually was working on a project with NASA, and I had just visited LARC over in Langley, the Langley Research Center, and so I got to see in the building. So the same people I was working with also worked. Some of them also worked on the escape module for the Orion rockets.
Mm.
So the actual Orion project is operating right now, not the original Orion project, which got scrapped because it was completely fucking infeasible. That was one where they decided to use kinetic plates in the back to absorb the shock from detonating nuclear explosions.
Well, I mean, it is a fairly effective way to get rid of your nuclear arsenal.
Yeah, but just imagine getting out of the atmosphere and how great that would be for everyone else on the ground.
It wouldn't be that bad.
It'd be pretty fucking awful. If you're trying to get people, if you're doing, all right, let me just put it like this: with all of the rockets we put into space right now, imagine replacing them with nuclear fuel.
I would have no issue with that.
Not only that, but there's also the problem where you're wasting half of the energy every time you set off one of the fucking bombs, which is one of the reasons cited for scrapping the whole project, because the whole entire thing is dependent on a process which loses half the energy output every time you try to use it.
Yeah.
And it's based on a mass dampener on basically a big spring behind the fucking thing.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous, but it's kind of
so there's
awesome
a reason why it was. It's great. Yeah, it's fascinating, but at the same time, there's no practicality to it, and that's why the whole project was scrapped. And he didn't know this, and it was hilarious because then he challenged me on my degrees later, and I just happened to be visiting home at the time. No, I happened to be visiting home at the time.
I love that when somebody who has no knowledge of science or technology comes in to be like, "How do I know that you're a real engineer?" You're like, "Motherfucker."
No, it was great because I happened to be visiting home where my diplomas are located, and so I just went and put them on the bed and took pictures and sent them. I said, "That's
I thought about doing that. But I don't. I realize there's 2 parts to me, right? One part wants to sit there and just whip out my fucking dick and just take a picture of it and be like, "Yeah, bitch, that's my fucking resume." Right?
Long, suck it hard.
But on the other hand, I'm like, well, you know what? It doesn't really matter what I fucking send these people. They're just gonna give you shit anyways. So what's the point?
Well, the point was that I thought he was a friend for a while, and it turns out that he wasn't a friend. He just, it's like, well, as a friend, he said, "We're not friends." So I went, "Oh, well, I guess there's that."
Yeah, Twitter's weird. Twitter's very weird. I
Oh,
lost.
this is the guy who is actually like in the whole other podcast thing I'm in. He was a longtime member of that, and like he just went batshit crazy middle of like 2015 when this whole nuclear powered rockets bullshit came up.
Huh.
And it just every single thing that I said afterwards, every last detail thereafter had to be challenged, as if I was the worst person in the world. He was just upset. It was sad.
I mean, nuclear powered rockets have been a thing since Russia openly released the fact that they had the technology.
Yeah, it was a nifty idea. It's just like it's not a practical thing, and the way that they're talking about being nuclear powered,
Mind
the
you,
way that he was considering
impractical,
it was
not infeasible.
right.
No,
I can see it.
It's absolutely feasible,
I can see it as a thing to do in
but it's
space.
retarded.
does have functional nuclear rockets, right? That's a thing that they have. And it's a real concern for the U.S. military because we don't know if we can shoot them down, right? Like, everybody sits there and talks about the Patriot missile system, and it's like 50-50 shot of fucking hitting a missile. Yeah, well, 90% of our shielding that we have in the United States and in every country that we're allied with is giant fucking lasers, right? So giant fucking lasers can blow up satellites. They can blow up airplanes, and they can blow up fucking missiles. So it's not a big deal. But the nuclear missiles travel so fast that they generate a plasma shell around the fucking missile. And it's a real thing, and it's a real technology, and we're not entirely sure our lasers can penetrate the plasma that is around the missile.
That would seriously attenuate it, wouldn't it?
It really would. It's an actual, like, oh shit, let's hope we don't go to war with these motherfuckers.
Well, that's the main
we
problem.
might not have people to shoot that shit down.
Well, here's the thing. Like, anytime you have re-entry of like an ICBM, that's going to be a concern because you're always going to generate that plasma in the upper atmosphere where the air is thinner.
So, well, but yes, you would on re-entry, right? So
right.
most of our laser systems are designed to take this shit out long before it hits there,
right?
Right. Yeah,
we also, by the way, we do have rods from God. That's not just a joke, but we should probably,
I thought we weren't allowed to put that up there.
Yeah, well, that's too late.
Yeah, that's the thing. As a matter of fact, you can kind of see evidence of it in a couple of recent events.
Now, that said,
I thought that was straight up. Like, I know that they proposed it.
It's not like fucking what the hell is that movie? It's not like G.I. Joe's, all right? It's not like that shit where we have the ability to take out London. It's smaller scale than that. But you can missile. Still you just put heavy shit up in the mid-Earth orbit and wait for a while, and then just. Oh no, we had a satellite malfunction and it happened to land on this Pakistani village that had nuclear bombs being developed.
Huh. I mean, I don't dispute what you're saying, but I need to see the actual documentation. Because I know
the documentation's going to be rough, but we might be able to get some pictures for you and some video.
I would, like anything else, right? Whenever somebody sits there and presents something that sounds not technically infeasible, but politically impractical, I always have a degree of skepticism.
Well, the great thing about being in the United States is that we're the motherfucking United States. We just kind of do what we want, and then afterwards we clean up the political mess. Like I said, it's not really something that's going to be disclosed.
A quick search that you or anyone else can do is into top secret USAF launches, or space launches for that matter, because they do them very, very regularly.
Oh, I know they do that regularly. That's not my concern. It's just when it comes down to space weapon rods from God, totally something I believe in. The technical concept was absolutely there. Basically, all you're doing is storing potential energy, right?
Yeah. So the point is that the way that they do it is they have a satellite malfunction, and instead of like the whole satellite coming down, you just have like this little rod.
Yeah, and not like the stuff like G.I. Joe, not like a school bus or something dropping. Like I actually don't know the technical specifications or what would be necessary, and this might be something. I'm going to try and find somebody on this actually that we could get on, because this would be a great topic.
That would be really cool. That'd be great if someone had more on that.
If anybody's listening to this and has a head ups to anybody that has some data on that, get in touch with any one of us.
I mean, I know the proposal was tungsten rods.
Yeah, so they're probably not tungsten.
Space.
Like, you don't need tungsten. Like, tungsten would be perfect because it also has the heat shielding.
Yes,
but-
tungsten would be a fantastic material to.
Oh, it's literally perfect.
And I gotta say, like, I have a tungsten cube, and that fucker is heavy.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Oh my god.
The density of like 18 grams per cubic centimeter there is kind of nuts. So
we have, because ultimately we don't do anything modern.
But
technology.
You could also guess that they're not made out of titanium. Little details like that.
Tungsten is amazing shit, man. Tungsten is amazing fucking shit. That shit is heavy. It is beautiful shielding. It's a wonderful element.
Yeah, that's it melts like over 4,000 K. So that one.
Oh yeah, no, it's
really
really a
4,000 feet.
wonder. I think
It's
somebody
the
actually went
hottest
out and made did a short run of tungsten blades, like tungsten carbide blades, not just the blade edge, the whole fucking knife. It was like a.
So here's the
pocket
problem.
knife.
That wouldn't be very good because tungsten carbide is brittle.
Oh no, it is. It absolutely is.
Tungsten is also not only the hardest. Tungsten is not only one of the hard. It is the hardest metal. It's also the most brittle because that's basically the same thing.
Yes.
It's also the highest melting point of the metals.
Oh
so
yeah, no, it was super expensive. It was a really great Kickstarter.
Like I would not want a tungsten carbide blade because I'd snap the fucker and I'd be all kinds of upset because it'd probably be expensive as hell.
Yeah.
It's great if you're grinding something, but like if you're trying to slice something, like unless I'm just cutting meat with it, if I'm using it as a butcher's knife, I'd probably be okay with it.
Yeah, but I
can't sharpen it. That's the other problem. You can't sharpen it against fucking anything.
Oh, my bad. No, they just did the edge on a tungsten carbide and braised it to stainless.
Okay.
Why would you do that?
Because
the
you want a
stainless
tungsten
gives you flexibility.
Yeah. And then you can also say, I've got a tungsten carbide pocket knife. Ugh. Also, carbon fiber and all the cool stuff. So, you can
again, though, like tungsten carbide, you're never going to really be able to sharpen it.
Not really, no. Not really at all.
Like I said, I'd be fine if I had like a meat cleaver made out of it. If I'm just gonna like chop steaks, as a kitchen knife or whatever, it'd be kind of cool. But if like I'm using it as a utility knife, I'm gonna fucking break it. And I'd be upset, and then I'd be like, money went down the drain.
I picked up as an EDC a Gerber dime.
Yeah.
And I fucking snapped the goddamn pliers on it. I was fucking.
What?
I was. Like,
well, I mean, the dimes are tiny, so like I kind of get it. But
I know.
How the fuck do you snap the
the pliers aren't supposed to be hardened.
It's snapping it that's getting me, not breaking it.
I was changing. I was slightly making alterations to a coat hanger because I just recently bought a car, right? I just recently bought a used car. It's like a 2010 Subaru. Fully loaded. I love the thing. It's fucking amazing. I'm super excited for it, once the DMV opens and I can actually register it. Because I live in New York and all government services are shut down, so I'm not really sure what I'm paying taxes for. Just throwing that out there. But the old Subarus, like the 2010, they had a nav system, which I have in mind. But it required DVDs. The only problem is the DVD loading mechanism has broken on the thing, so it just it kind of like spins there, and so it looks like the guy originally sat there and he put one DVD in, and they put another DVD in to go after it as like a rescue mission, and that failed. And then of course, while I'm doing my testing, I put a third one in. I managed to retrieve his too. But as part of the testing, I continued to insert DVDs to find out how exactly full this thing would go. So I was trying to retrieve these things, and all I needed to do was to get my coat hanger in there and yank out the DVDs that were stuck and not able to be ejected or inserted into the device. And my Gerber dime snapped while I was shaping a fucking coat hanger. I was pissed. I'm pissed. I actually am going to be emailing Gerber and being like, "What the fuck, guys?" Like,
dude, they have these like big metal multi-tools. I'll have to link you that they're just fantastic.
I have one.
My daily driver at in the lab for a number of years.
Really? Because I got a Leatherman I went with the titanium, whatever that one is, the Surge Plus, I think it is.
Yeah,
Titanium. Okay. Like full blown, I had my Discover was paid off, and I had enough Discover points that I just bought it straight out on Amazon. I'm super happy with it. But I was pissed off that my EDC is fucking it just snapped with a coat hanger. I'm like, poink! I watch one of the pliers fly off, and you're like,
I mean, that is legitimately impressive. I carry just a crappy little Swiss Tech.
So let me just go find this fucking Gerber now. I got my mind on it. I just have to go to Amazon, just like, hey, where are my pliers and shit? And it'll just be repeated.
I love cheap Chinesium, but I hope that I spent $20 and I got a decent friggin' EDC, and all of a sudden it just, and you're like, what the fuck?
There we go, the MP 600. So this was this was not a cheap one, but this was fucking worth it. Like,
really?
Yeah. So this is my daily driver for a number of years. It's $83 now. That's nuts.
Jesus, yeah.
Oh, but if you get one of their credit cards and get locked into their system, you can save $20.
Oh, that's fantastic! Yeah.
Thank you, Amazon. I'm so happy now.
Oh my god.
No, but this one I like a lot.
How big is it? Is
it's man-sized. It's so the pliers actually have a unique mechanism. You actually see those 3 dots on the side.
Yeah.
You depress the middle dot on both sides, and you slide it straight down into it.
Huh.
So just the handle parts of it are about the width of your hand. If I have like magic hands, like magician's hands, so I don't know, maybe a little bit wider for you. But
it doesn't look big. Super big. It looks like it's 6 inches by
it's not crazy 3. Big. It's not crazy big.
It's just a little bit bigger than that, actually. And I have actually handled one of these. They're a really nice tool. They're comfortable in the hand.
Really? Yeah.
I worked on shit that was like 400 degrees C with this stuff too. Like it's
really.
Yeah, it works. It's in the cutters at the base of the pliers are good. I had to rewire. Yeah, so actually this comes in a needle nose too. There's not just the snub nose. There's also a needle nose.
I'm gonna see if Gerber will replace my unit, considering I've had it for less than a year.
Yeah, I would do that.
It's usually worth checking. They've got a pretty good warranty, from my understanding.
Yeah. I'm kind of hoping on that, and it looks, honestly, after because obviously you can see the metal. I'm seeing grain that okay. I shouldn't be seeing, so it looks like it's a manufacturing defect. It really does. It looks like that. It looks really like that because it is linear to the breakpoint.
So okay.
On a level and plane that I haven't seen. Like there's no.
So it didn't anneal properly then.
Yeah, you got
it. No.
That's it.
It looks like that's
it happens. It was probably the whole tool too.
Now, when you get in touch with them, they're probably going to want you to send that back because they're not supposed to be lemons. So they're going to probably want to actually take that thing apart. And I imagine they'll be glad to send you another.
I'm okay with that. Either way, right? Like at the end of the day, I have my Leatherman, which is the like I said, the Surge Plus TI. I love it. I love it to death. That thing can rip anything apart. Also, I have like a $15 Walmart pair, which is pretty amazing. I know that sounds terrible,
right?
But it's absolutely amazing. It's the old Roman style of it can handle 5 times what it's supposed to. That way we know it does what it's supposed to. But yeah, no, I gotta send that back. That's on the to-do list.
Nah, you do. You absolutely should. Besides, they're a good company, so they genuinely will take care of you. Because if it's actual Gerber, they do good. If it's actual Leatherman, they also do good by it. Like those two are. Well, they've got a good reputation in like the EDC and prepper and like military and law enforcement community for a reason.
I mean, it was a good tool. The only thing that I didn't like about it was the key ring. is right above the bottle holder,
Mm.
which is super annoying. That is, if they had it catty corner, it would have been great. But that's the only thing I didn't like about the dime. The dime is amazing. Little stubby half-inch knife. But it's amazing.
Yeah, I actually haven't used one of those. I used one of the
dimes?
old. Yeah, no, I've only used one of the old Leathermans. Back when they were faced the other way, too, where they dig the shit out of your hands.
Oh, my new Leatherman's amazing. Oh.
Yeah, I know everything in that whole line. Like, there's just really, really good multi-tools. And with...
Now,
I know
the other sets of multi-tools I used before were basically, the Chinesium, but there's a couple of them. Cerberuso is surprisingly good for the money I ended up paying for it. So I had some people that came in under me in the lab, and I just like, you guys have multi-tools, right? It's like, no. It's like, well, you need a multi-tool. You're getting one.
Yeah, I mean, you really don't want to have to MacGyver some shit. You really, really don't.
Yeah, I love that too.
I am so impressed with my Leatherman that I'm probably going to end up ordering the Wave for my wife.
Yeah.
It like the Surge, which is what I have, is like top tier, and there's like 2 tools different, and then they coated some of the stuff with titanium, so it's a little bit lighter and stronger. But the Wave is like all of the same shit at half the price. And I'm absolutely going to be picking that up for my wife, because I'm getting sick and tired of like having to find tools for her. Also, she has a tendency to leave my shit outside, which pisses me off.
Fair point. I mean, I'll be honest, I do want to pick up one of the Leatherman Raptors, though, because that's a really, really great one to have for your your EDC and your first aid kit. They're the surgeons, or the EMT style, fold down scissors. They've got a strap cutter. They're awesome. Check them out. They're Leatherman Raptors.
There's several of the ones that I've had in the past. Starting off with the Gerber, and then there's the kind of Chinesiums that come after that. So I think the next, like the middle 2, I think are still available. The last one there is unavailable, but you can see how it's basically they're all knockoffs of the same design.
Oh yeah, they all are. I mean, there's not much difference between any of them.
And I in the distant past, I actually had a Leatherman Juice, which was great, and then I got out of high school and ended up having to do real engineering work, which it worked out for a while. It got rusty. I actually didn't take care of it properly towards the end of its life. I had it for like probably almost a solid 8 years before it finally died in undergrad.
Yeah, I used to. So there's a couple toolkits actually. Like, if you're looking for my favorite toolkit ever, it's a set of screwdrivers. I use it, so I run a small business, and my small business is repairing TVs, because oddly enough, I actually get paid more to repair TVs than I do as an engineer.
Now, what's funny is it takes an engineer to repair TVs today.
Oh, it doesn't take an engineer. I just happen to be an engineer, and I realized that $90 an hour is fucking amazing.
This is true.
So let me. But there is a screwdriver set. I spent a long time when I was working as a technician for the previous company, which did ATM repairs, and that paid about as much as I first started out as an engineer. But then I moved into what I'm doing now, and I'm making like $90 an hour or so, and it's friggin' awesome. I love it. But there is a screwdriver set. This screwdriver set, man, this is the best screwdriver set I have ever owned, and I intend to buy another one of them. I'm gonna link that, because this is something that everybody should buy.
All right, well, I'll put a link to it in the doobly-doo underneath. Yeah. What is this? Okay, I haven't seen these. I've seen something with a similar design.
Oh, I have something similar to that.
Oh my god, it's amazing. They have a neodymium magnet inside of the screwdriver, so that I don't actually have to worry about my magnetic tips. It's amazing.
Huh, fair. Oh, looks like a neat thing. Currently unavailable, it says, though.
Oh no! No!
You're linking me bullshit here, man.
Oh, I'm so that
Mm.
that actually makes me so mad. I
Mm,
bought
mm,
it not too long ago too. Like I think I bought it less than a year ago.
Now, I see a Gang Jai Bao precision screwdriver set here for a measly price of $25.99. That looks like it might
Yeah.
be comparable.
There's an Amazon Basics 73-piece magnetic ratchet French and screwdriver set.
Ah, good times. Well, I think
Yeah,
we've.
I might actually
well,
be
well,
really
basic.
angry about that. This, like, my case broke, and I was thinking about spending the additional $15 or whatever it was to buy this thing.
Well,
This is upsetting.
condolences.
This is very upsetting.
Yeah, well, that's how it happens. I'm seeing something similar. It says it's AO Sky. But,
Wow.
that's probably a Chinesium knockoff. Because, well, of course it is. Because everything is.
Man.
So anyway, we've kind of diverged so far into... I don't even know what field we're in now.
Did you have anything else to throw at us here?
Yeah, I know. Now, we've pretty much wrapped it up. We've gone over everything we really needed to cover. We've covered a little bit of the modern stuff and I don't know, just had an interesting chat amongst each other here about what awesome tools you should get. So, anyway, check us out again, undoubtedly next week. We might have Kevin on. Definitely going to have one or both of these guys back. So, thanks for being here.